And before we go further, I want to report that we did have a closed session prior to the regular session. We have not completed the closed session. We will continue the closed session after we adjourn the regular session. And so why don't we then proceed? We have item 2, the agenda, posting of the agenda. Has it been posted? Yes.
Yes, Mayor, it has been posted.
And there are no changes to the regular agenda. So that brings us to item 3, open time for public expression. If anyone's present and would like to address us, yes, please. Please, any remarks are limited to 3 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, please come forward to the microphone. Thank you. Hi.
Good evening, Mayor Kirschner and members of the Ross Town Council. My name is Diane Duda, and I am your representative to the Marin County Commission on Aging. Tonight, I'd like to provide you with a very, very, very brief overview of the Commission and to request that I be placed on the agenda of the October Ross Town Council in order that I can update you on what is happening with the work of the Commission and the needs of older adults in Marin County and Ross. I'm having a little trouble with this microphone here. Working together, we can ensure our town's needs are represented in the planning considerations of the Marin County Board of Supervisors. The Marin County Commission on Aging is federally mandated by the Older Americans Act of 1965. We are a 23-member advisory council advocating to the Board of Supervisors on behalf of Marin residents who are 60 years and older. Our mission is to promote the dignity, independence, and quality of life of older persons through advocacy, information, programs, and services. The commissioners are appointed for 3-year terms and include 1 member appointed by each city, town, and unincorporated area in Marin, 2 members appointed by each of the 5 supervisorial districts, and 2 members chosen to serve on the California Senior Legislature. Today, people 60 years of age and older make up 30% of the population of Marin County. This projection is expected to move to 40% in the next 10 years. Bringing this closer to home, in Ross, 26.1% of our population is 60 and older. We have residents who are living alone and isolated. We have residents who are food and housing insecure. I look forward to working with you to honor the Older Americans Act, which states that in keeping with the traditional American concept of the inherent dignity of the individual in our democratic society, we ensure that older people of our nation have full access to participation in American society. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to working together with you.
Great, thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to address the council? Yes, please. Hello.
The other Diane, as we say. My name is Diane Redden. I live at 39 Willow Avenue. And in the last few years, we've acquired quite a few little kids in our neighborhood. And as always, people can't figure out how to slow down and stop at certain stop signs. I talked to my husband about this, and he said, well, Diane, you have to realize that there has to be a study, a traffic study to make any changes. That's what happens when you run into people that know. Anyway, I decided that I am going to sit out in front of my house in the morning with my cup of coffee and wave at people and see what I can accomplish. And I will let you know what I accomplish. And there are going to be other people in the neighborhood that are going to assist me in different other places. We're going to be sitting on private property, but hopefully I can convince some people to slow down. I don't mind them doing U-turns in front of my house. But I almost got hit the other day with this gal doing a U-turn. We'll see, okay? So just so that you know, when people call and tell you about that lady by the stop sign, it's me.
Thank you, and thank you for what you're about to do, I think. All right, anyone else? Public comment, yes, please.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
My name's Ken Petrilla, and I am a longtime resident of the town of Ross. I'm here, I made an effort to come because there's something on your agenda that I want to pay attention to. But since this is an open mic, and heard what I just heard, I wanted to bring something else that I hadn't planned to talk about. I live in the Winship Park area. At the corner of Sir Francis Drake and Winship, that is a very, very dangerous corner. It has been for a long time. Someone, I'm told, just had an accident. I don't know about that. Neighbors have been bringing that to the attention of the town for a long time. There's simply too much parking on Winship as you go to enter into Sir Francis Drake. There should be some red curbs there so cars aren't so close to Sir Francis Drake. So cars are parked there, you're exiting, you want to get on Sir Francis Drake, you're to the left of those cars, people coming in, turning, there's no room for anybody else there at all. It could be corrected by just extending or putting some red lines there so people can't park so close to Sir Francis Drake. I think that would make a big difference. And I don't know the extent of the accident that recently occurred, but I would say that accident and people speaking out and my speaking for the record, the town council is on sort of notice that something needs to be done. So that's my, not the main reason I'm here, but since I had this opportunity, I wanted to express that. Thank you very much for listening to that.
Yes, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to
I
address
just
the
wanted to
council?
give one, for anybody, there's going to be a Public Works Subcommittee meeting, and it will be an agenda will be posted, and the intersection that you're describing is one of the items that we are discussing. It is something that we've discussed as a council, and there should be an update brought at that meeting.
When will that be?
Tuesday, next Tuesday, the 17th at 3 p.m.
3 p.m.
Anyone else that wish to address the council at this time? Is there anyone on Zoom with a raised hand? No, there are no raised hands. Great, thank you very much. All right, then we will move next to item 4, presentation of 10-year service award to Mallory Barron.
Mayor and Council, Maureen Borthwick, our Recreation Manager, is here to introduce the topic and our fabulous employee.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you, Mayor Kircher and council members. I am here to celebrate a significant achievement for a member of our Ross Recreation team. It is my distinct honor to recognize Mallory Barron, Recreation Specialist, for her 10 years of dedicated service to the town of Ross, Ross Recreation, and the greater Ross community. Mallory joined Ross Recreation a decade ago as a co-lead of the Kids Club after-school program, working alongside her mother, Rhonda, until 2020. Returning in 2022 after the pandemic, Mallory restarted her journey with Ross Recreation as the Kids Club lead this time, and then moved into her current role as a recreation specialist a few months later. Throughout her tenure and various roles, Mallory has embodied the spirit of commitment, reliability, and excellence. Her unwavering passion and stellar organizational skills have enriched our youth after-school programs, expanded the adult program schedule, and most importantly, has made a profound positive impact on countless families. Mallory's contributions go beyond daily tasks. Mallory is a problem solver and a beacon of positivity. Her dedication to her role has set a high standard for all of us and have helped shape Ross Recreation into the vibrant and supportive environment it is today. Mallory, if you may, please stand up. Thank you for your decade of hard work, your inspiring dedication, and your invaluable presence with Ross Recreation. Congratulations on this incredible achievement.
All right, and I have a certificate of appreciation and a gift, which I will present as well. All right, so now the item you've all been waiting for, the mayor's report, item 5. Just wait, this is a good one, okay? All right, here is the mayor's report for September 12th. As we head into the fall months, please be sure to add the Rosstown Dinner to your calendar if you have not already done so. This is an annual tradition which began in 2005 and will again take place on the Common and on September 27th. It's a chance to mingle and reconnect with friends and neighbors under the trees. And details can be found on the town website, and there may be an additional email. And I hope you also had a chance to participate in the Live on the Common event held on September 6th. And many thanks to the RPOA for putting on this event. And special thanks to Elena Batalla for all her continuing efforts in organizing these fun and entertaining town events. The summer months are typically a slow time in Ross, with many families vacationing and participating in summer activities, outside activities. But you might have noticed that work, particularly if you happen to be on Sir Francis Drake, by the way, trying to get somewhere on time, you might have noticed that work has continued throughout the summer on various infrastructure projects, both in Ross and in Marin County generally. Some of our projects are short-term and some longer-term and completed in phases, such as the Safe Routes to School. Turned off. Well, I'll start over. No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that, okay? I told you this will be good. Sorry you missed the first part. Did somebody do this intentionally? Okay. One such project is the replacement of our aging town administrative and public safety buildings. We completed site planning last year, but further detailed construction planning is dependent on whether the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority is willing to make a sufficient commitment to keep its paramedic station, also known as Medic 18, in Ross. We had originally been led to believe we might have a decision in this regard sometime in the spring, but action is now not expected until later this year due to delays in completion of a study that the authority has commissioned. The other major undertaking is one in which Ross is a stakeholder but is not in charge of the overall flood project, and that is removal of the fish ladder and related changes to the Corte Madera Creek channel to reduce the risk of flooding in times of heavy rain. In perusing some old issues of the Morning After newsletter, I noticed that back in 2010, replacement of the fish ladder was predicted to occur in 2011. And as they say, a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. But it's still there, 13 years later. So the flood zone website now currently states that removal of the fish ladder is anticipated in 2025. So we shall see. For the present, please enjoy these last days of summer, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the town dinner on the 27th. All right, so we will move on now to item 6, which is council committee and liaison reports. And item 6A, we're starting off with hearing from Chris Martin, Marin County Flood Control Zone 9 Advisory Board Member for Ross. Yes, hi, Chris. I didn't mean anything when I mentioned the fish ladder. I know it's not your fault. And
was
I know,
predicted.
and I can't remember who was the mayor in 2010 anyway. Wait.
Geez, I think I was.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I'm going to speak about that.
Welcome.
Well, good evening, Mayor.
Yeah.
Good evening, council members. How many of you have experienced a Ross Valley flood event? Okay, were you, I know you did, Elizabeth, too. Were you directly impacted, or family? School was, of course. And your house was? Okay. Well, you know what it's like. And it's hard to believe, because our last flood was already about 20 years ago, the 2005 flood. And obviously, the creek is but a trickle now. But like the Russian River, it turns into something powerful with some of our storms. I'd like to first start with a little background. The Ross Valley watershed is 28 square miles. It extends from Mount Tamalpais and White's Hill through Fairfax, Sleepy Hollow, San Anselmo, Ross, Kentfield, Green Bay, Larkspur, Corte Madera, and finally San Francisco Bay. Within this watershed, there are numerous creeks and tributaries. Fairfax Creek, San Anselmo Creek, Ross Creek, all feed into Corte Madera Creek. One thing that's interesting and important to note, that the natural course of our creek system has been altered considerably. In the late 1870s, the Corte Madera Creek was modified in Ross and San Anselmo when berms were built to accommodate the Northwestern Pacific Railway. New ditches were dug to redirect the flow of creek water through what is now downtown San Anselmo and Ross. Unfortunately, these new ditches did not have the benefit of handling creek water for thousands of years. Corte Madera Creek has overflowed its banks 25 times in the last 100 years, with the floods of 1925, 1955, 1982, and 2005 causing the most damage. The 2005 flood caused over $100 million in damage, affecting 240 homes, 75 retail and commercial structures, 2 elementary schools, including Ross, the College of Marin, 2 post offices, the Ross Town Hall, the San Anselmo Town Hall, and the police and firehouses in Ross, San Anselmo, and Fairfax. In reaction to the 2005 flood event, property owners in the Ross Valley watershed, also known as Flood Zone 9, voted for a flood fee to identify causes and implement solutions to reduce the impact and severity of flooding. The program of work for Flood Zone 9 is administered by the Marin County Flood Control and Water Conservation District, and overseen by the Marin County Board of Supervisors. The objective for Flood Zone 9 is to substantially reduce the frequency and severity of flooding throughout Ross Valley watershed while prioritizing public safety and minimizing environmental impacts. In 2012, the Flood Zone 9 Advisory Board adopted a 10-year plan, which included a series of detention basins to hold back potential floodwaters, bridge and creek modifications to improve water flow as well, and undertaking feasibility and extensive environmental studies, along with community meetings and outreach. As of today, the Sunnyside Stormwater Detention Basin in Fairfax has been built. Building Bridge 2, which constricts the flow of water in San Anselmo Creek, has been purchased by the Marin County Flood Control District for demolition. A new pump station and several storm drain projects in Gratong Park, which is near College of Marin in Kentfield, are operational. Extensive cleaning of creeks and culverts occur each year, and a detailed computer model of how the creeks in Ross Valley function has been developed. There are still 2 projects pending in Flood Zone 9. One of them is the San Anselmo Flood Risk Reduction Project. The primary purpose of this project is to increase creek capacity by removing existing obstructions to creek flow, including the platform that remains at Building Bridge 2, which is the former location of La Part Restaurant in San Anselmo. It also includes structural mitigation measures downstream in the creek channel. The project will potentially reduce flooding to over 500 properties in San Anselmo and Ross. There are also approximately 5 properties along the creek that may have an increase in flood heights as a result of this project. Currently, the project is on hold until FEMA assesses the latest hydraulic model developed by the Flood Control District. FEMA will review and determine whether there are any issues with the model before a permit is issued. That permit is required. The other project that still is pending is the Corte Madera Creek Flood Risk Management Project. Cumbersome names, I tell you. The objective of this project is to reduce the frequency and severity of flooding in Ross and Kentfield by enhancing and improving the Corte Madera Creek's capacity. The project will make improvements to the concrete channel that the Army Corps of Engineers built in the late 1960s and 70s. The concrete channel ends in the town of Ross and begins at the earthen channel near Kent School athletic field. The proposed channel improvements provide an increased 25-year flood protection to the residents and the businesses in the town of Ross and Kentfield. The improvements also improve fish habitat and passage. The project includes removing the so-called fish ladder. The fish ladder is located about 200 feet downstream from the Ross Post Office. The removal of the fish ladder is long overdue. It never functioned properly. It only prevented and impeded the upstream migration of fish. Eddie Aaron and Don Aaron of the fabled Ross Grocery always cited that the fish ladder led to the flooding, destructive flooding in their stores. They even said, if we get a group of guys together on a weekend, I'll provide the beer, let's take it out. Unfortunately, taking it out needs permits from the Army Corps of Engineers and other agencies, as well as mitigation and building up walls to handle the increased water. But it will be replaced. And I'll give you a timeline on that that's different from next year, unfortunately. It's another delay. But it will be demolished and replaced with a more gradual creek transition, as natural as possible in the concrete channel, which will allow the passage of fish. It's interesting to note that prior to the construction of the concrete channel, coho salmon and steelhead used to migrate upstream during winter months in such numbers that fishing shacks existed in the San Domenico School. I think Public Works Director Richard Simonich has a few fish stories that he can talk about when he was a kid. The project also includes installing taller new flood walls in the flood channel to control flood flows that currently go into Granton Park upstream from the College of Marin. The creation of larger fish resting pools within the concrete channel will also be built to improve fish passage. And a final project includes removes 625 linear feet of concrete wall from the lower reaches of the concrete channel at the College of Marin and beyond to improve fish and wildlife habitat. That project has received full funding from the California Coastal Commission and is scheduled to commence construction at the end of next year. The timetable on the other projects, including the fish ladder, the new flood walls, and the resting pools for fish, will commence in 2026, and I think that's a relative realistic date. In addition, there'll be a community workshop about the Corte Madera Flood Risk Project on October 15th at Marin Catholic High School. All of you will receive notifications as well as the community. There also will be a Flood Zone 9 meeting on November 7th. It's scheduled tentatively, and I don't know the site yet. If you have any questions about anything, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you for your report, Chris,
Sure.
and your history. I believe it was in the March election that the town of San Anselmo voted to remove themselves from Flood Zone 9. I'm wondering if you have any insight on what that means in terms of the
The only thing that happens, to my understanding, and it may go through some legal review, and I'm not a lawyer, but San Anselmo just gives up its seat. It still is assessed until the flood fee expires in a couple of years to, pay those dues, but they lose their seat. So I don't understand it.
You wouldn't recommend that Ross consider a similar move?
Absolutely not. We have too much to gain with these projects. And the other thing is, even though the funding and the improvements stop on this, I think we're going to want to continue with creek improvements, particularly as we develop more property with ADUs and other things. It ultimately means more water in the creek basin. And we're going to have horrible, obviously, storms in the future with global warming. So,
Chris, thank you so much for such a detailed report. I'm wondering, can we get this? It looks like you've written it down. Can
Sure.
we get it in writing? I'm wondering if it's something we can distribute to the town. We get a lot of questions about what the update is. And so I know a lot of people aren't attending here, but if we
Sure.
could send it to them, it'd be great.
great. Oh, thank you.
Chris, one question. Is it your understanding that the plans for the SAFER project and the Corte Madera Creek project, those plans are complete, but we're just waiting for FEMA to review the new modeling and give us feedback, or are the plans awaiting FEMA action?
I understand that FEMA and the county are going to actually start meeting on this in October. The model, I think, hasn't been finalized, and the final model is going to be submitted at that time. I don't know how long it takes for FEMA to review and give comments. It's kind of unknown at this point how long that will take. But it is delaying that project from going forward.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Anyone else? Is there any member of the public, any raised hands with questions?
Yes,
Chris, we
there's-
do have a member of the public, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry. Yes, there's one member. Sorry. Go ahead, GP.
you. My name actually is Darrell Page. Sorry about that. I've never been able to change it. That was a very, very interesting report. And I would be very curious to know where Chris has gotten his documentation, as a great deal of it does not in any way comport with what I understand to be the case or have heard at any meeting, such as the AB meetings or meetings with the county. I would like to point out a couple of that are obvious. When you talk about the detention basins, you know that the public actually passed general plan amendments. They were so angry about those. But the one that was built, the Sunnyside Basin, was supposed to hold 88 acre feet. As it is built, it holds 13.5 acre feet. So like many of the basins, that was grossly inflated in those projections that the county was hoping would come to fruition. The other piece that is kind of interesting is contrasting 625 linear feet of concrete removal in the lower reaches of the Corte Madera Creek versus the over 2,000 feet of new walls up to 6 feet tall that are going to be put in. I think that these things need to be looked into. I would also question the actual beginning of it in the 1870s. I believe the railroads came in and took advantage of a natural flood that rerouted the creek, which used to come down through Bolinas Avenue and then switched over to the other side of San Anselmo because of a massive blockage and flood, which the railroads then took advantage of. But there is a good deal of that report that I would certainly like to understand the basis of, and I hope that you will put references for all of it in any report that you distribute to the town. As you may recall, I was head of the Ross Flood Historical Society for 10 years. During the period that I was with the Historical Society, we entered the 106 process and actually were on the contract with the Corps of Engineers, and therefore were at every meeting given all documentations and allowed to make input on all of it from way back. And I am afraid a good deal of what you have just heard is not at all compatible with what I have experienced or know. And yes, I have been through both the flood of 82 and 85 and 86. Living in Ross, the house was flooded. The school bus dropped all the kids at the house. They spent the night. Oh, jolly fun. Yes, indeed. I remember it quite well. So that's my statement. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. All right. Any response, Chris, or?
No, I think
I'm sure
everything I presented was accurate.
Great. Thank you so much then.
Okay.
All right, now we'll go into item 6B. Any other committee or liaison reports?
Sorry, yeah, I have something.
Councilmember McMillan.
I wanted to let everyone know that on Saturday, Ember Stomp was held at the Marin County Fairgrounds, and more than 5,000 people attended. It was sponsored by Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. There was a really interesting demonstration of two houses being burned. One house had defensible space in Zone 0, which is the first 5 feet from the structure out. The other had no defensible space. And it's not surprising that the house that had no defensible space went up in flames in about 20 minutes and was completely destroyed. So it's emphasizing the need for people to not have any organic material in the first 5 feet from your structure and from your deck. And there's new rules that will be coming down probably soon, but they've been taking a long time to develop. It's going to be a huge change. The other thing I wanted to mention was I went on a field trip on behalf of Marin Wildfire on yesterday, at the San Rafael San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone, which is the area that is, if you go west on Fifth and ends at the cemetery, it's all those eucalyptus trees that are in that area that are slowly being removed to enhance the fuel break between San Rafael, San Anselmo, and Ross. And the last thing I wanted to mention was on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, September 18th at Marin Art and Garden, the town of Ross, the Barbara Winship Firewise neighborhood, in conjunction, will be sponsoring an educational event where Mark Brown, who's the executive officer of Marin Wildfire, and Kathleen Cutter, who is in charge of all the defensible space inspectors, will be speaking to us about how to get ahead of the property insurance crisis. So it's from 5 to 7. I hope you all will be there. There'll be a little blurb in the morning after, and we'll send out another email reminder early next week. Thank you.
Okay. Sort of in line with Julie, on Monday, the Age Friendly Ross Task Force is going to be holding a breakfast at Cedars, and it's from 9:30 to 11:30, and the focus will be on disaster planning and looking at those defensible opportunities that people have to make their home more fire resistant, and talking about making sure that people, particularly older people, are able to be alerted through the various alert systems that exist in the case of a disaster or an emergency. So anybody's available and interested, it's 9:30 to 11:30, Cedars, breakfast is served. Thank you.
Any other reports? I have a report concerning the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority, which I attended as the alternate, given that Councilmember Robbins was vacationing that week. 2 items. The first is the easy one to report on. The authority authorized the purchase of a new ambulance for Medic 18, which is our ambulance stationed here presently in Ross. We probably won't see that ambulance from up to 2 years, but it is in process. The other is that we were expecting and have been waiting for a decision on an extension of our current lease for the Paramedic Authority, and we've been hoping for a commitment from the authority to remain here in Ross for a sufficiently long period of time to justify our undertaking to build new quarters for the paramedics. The study that we had expected earlier has still not been completed, but the other development was we were informed that the study that has been undertaken was quite a bit broader than what we had been led to believe initially it might cover. And that was offered partly as a reason for the delay. In other words, that there was more involved. We're also told that there was also a problem initially with the data, but apparently the main issue is that it's a broader study, and so we're thinking that it may be quite a bit longer before we get a decision. They were talking about something perhaps in October or November. So we are still, unfortunately, in a bit of a holding pattern here, and we are anxious to understand more about the scope of this study that we thought was more of a limited deployment study. So anyway, that completes my report. So if there are no further reports from the council, we now turn to 7B, the Ross Property Owners Association. Is anyone present here or on Zoom? Is it? I beg your pardon. I turned the page too quickly. I was trying to turn the page on the paramedic authority, and instead I
Okay,
turned
I'll
the
survive.
page on my agenda. You're absolutely correct. Town Manager Johnson,
Great,
please.
thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I have a few updates for you tonight, and one has to do with some housing things that we're required to do in a public meeting, so I'm just going to get it done, okay? The mayor mentioned the annual town dinner will be held on Friday, September 27th. There will be musical performances by Pride and Joy and by a local band called Mooners. It is sure to be a fun event. Please register at rossrecreation.org/events/town dinner. Big thanks to RPOA for purchasing 4 new benches for the tennis courts and for the fabulous Live on the Common concert last Friday. Fire season is here. We continue to find cars parked illegally on roads that may prevent access by emergency vehicles. The Ross Municipal Code requires there to be 12 feet of unobstructed roadway at all times to allow access by emergency vehicles. 5 signs reminding drivers of this requirement were installed earlier this summer at 5 different locations. And during the month of August, police officers provided warnings to violators. This has now transitioned into enforcement, and violators are receiving citations. So tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell people visiting that they're going to get a ticket if they don't leave that clearance, okay? Last week, the town began dismantling the pedestrian bridges that serve the picnic areas at Natalie Coffin Green Park. You may recall that last year, our Public Works Director determined that these 3 wooden timber pedestrian bridges have exceeded their usable life and need to be replaced. The town will be installing new bridges at these locations. However, due to the seasonal restrictions imposed by the state regulatory agencies, the town has a very limited window for completing all the work in this area. The town is going to need to demolish the bridges over this next month and then install the new bridges a year from now, September to October 2025. This means that except for the main MMWD access road bridge, there will be no available means to cross over the creek within the picnic area for up to 12 months. The town is coordinating with MMWD to upgrade the switchback trail and the split rail fence that leads from their maintenance road down to the Three Bear Picnic Hut, which is on town property. Since this will be the only way for visitors to access the picnic area around the hunt for the 12-month period of time. The other picnic area can be accessed using the trail from the parking lot that runs along the creek. So beginning tomorrow, there will be some parking restricted in the area of the public restrooms in the park, as the town's contractor needs to mobilize their equipment for the removal of the remaining bridges. The demolition will begin next week, and this information that I just read to you will be sent out via e-blast to our list of residents tomorrow. So Chipper Days are sponsored by MWPA, and they are coming up the end of the month for Ross residents. Residents can reserve a pickup at reserve.chipperday.com/Marin. And looks like there is still quite a bit of space available for your reservations. So, in other Public Works news, the Ross Creek Cleanup Day, sponsored by the department, is being held on Saturday, September 21st. The annual event provides an opportunity for kids and grown-ups to get our hands-on tour of the Ross and Corte Madera Creeks while helping town staff maintain our primary drainage ways by removing debris and litter before the winter rains comes. Meet in front of Ross Post Office at 9 a.m. sharp and wear old clothes, long pants, long sleeves, and gloves if you have them. We'd appreciate your help. Okay, so here's the housing part. So we had this fantastic intern. I introduced you to her last month. Her name is Charlotte DeForest, and she spent a month working with us and really was supervised very admirably by our planning and building director, Roberta Fisolano. And she did some great work for us. she put together quite a few resources that are now on the town website, and they're also going to be sent out throughout this coming year annually in the morning after e-newsletter. But we also have to talk about them briefly in an open session, and that's what I'm doing. So some of these resources that we are now available to Ross residents and anyone who peruses our website is it talks about housing needs in Ross. So our housing element that the council approved last year and was recently certified by the state of California, it requires the town to inform the public about the need for workforce housing and affordable housing in Ross. Yes, there is a need for it. Staff recently created an infographic on this, which is linked on the town's website under our new housing page. And as you know, we have entered a new housing element cycle, which will allow the town to work towards goals of creating more housing at all income levels in our community. There's also another resource regarding accessory dwelling units, which we affectionately call ADUs. The town's website now includes new information, resources, and checklists that allow residents to easily apply for and build ADUs. The website also provides information and a link to an initiative and an organization called Home Match Marin. Our housing element requires the town to promote home sharing programs, which will increase affordable housing opportunities in Ross. Home Match Marin, it's a free service based out of San Rafael that connects people seeking to rent a room in their home or their ADU on their property with community members that are seeking affordable housing options. Home providers benefit from the additional income, the companionship, and/or help with chores such as grocery shopping, pet care, or transportation. This is a great option for Ross residents that have ADUs. Information can be found at frontporch.net/live/home-match. There's also something cumbersomely called FHANC, but we pronounce it as FANCY. Fair Housing Advocates of Northern California is an organization which provides resources for residents on accessing and securing fair housing. On top of providing education regarding fair housing, FANCY aids with investigating and filing housing discrimination complaints with the state. Another event on September 18th is during the day, you can go to the Marin Senior Fair with the Community Action Marin. They are hosting their annual senior fair on September 18th from 9 to 3 at the Marin Center Exhibit Hall. Attendance and parking are free. The fair will have booths to learn more about many of the housing resources that I've already mentioned, as well as music and dancing. And then in that evening, you can go to our Fire Safe Marin Neighborhoods event at Magic. And finally, I will return my report over now to Chief Pata, our police chief, who has some information to provide to the council on recent events. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, members of the community. This is the perfect opportunity for me to bring you up to speed on some events that have happened here in town that some of them are kind of taking on a life of their own, so I'm the right guy to talk to, and I wanted to give you an update on what happened. So on August 20th, we had an armed robbery that happened in this town, which is shocking. It's shocking in any town, but I was surprised that it had happened here. What happened there was a member of our business community was crossing the street and was confronted by a group of young men who, one of them displayed what we believe to be a firearm and demanded her property. From there, they took her property and then they left our town. What we later learned was that they'd actually committed a burglary in Kentfield just before. And then once they left Ross, they discarded a lot of the items that they had taken from our resident or from our property owner here, and went to Mill Valley and committed a second robbery. From there, they drove into San Francisco and disappeared for a while. This, you know, I had to look into this because this was just such an anomaly. And what I found was that this was the first armed robbery in Ross in 4 years. It's the second in 20 years. So it's not something that happens that often, but even one is too many. So we put out an all points bulletin like we normally do, and we asked the county to look for this car. Sure enough, the car did pop up leaving Mill Valley, and there was a small chase, and they lost the car and it went across the bridge. Interestingly, what we learned is that we did get a license plate on the car. What we learned was that the car had been stolen from the South Bay area at 3 o'clock in the morning that morning. We know that because that license plate information was captured by a flock camera system. And so what that system did was able to look in its database for everywhere that car had been. And what we learned is that car had been all over the San Francisco Bay Area. Finally, the car was dumped in Newark in the East Bay. It was dumped late that night, and they were kind enough to process that car for evidence for us. It's above and beyond, really. They went inside the car for us, they swabbed it for DNA, and now we're kind of in a waiting period with that. So unfortunately, they were all masked up. So the only way we're going to be able to make this case is get a DNA hit on the inside of that car, more specifically on the items that were taken that we recovered. The only way that's going to work is if they've been entered into the system. So we're in kind of a strange place right now. We're kind of in limbo waiting for the results. It might take a few months for us to get those results back. But the most important part is that our victim was not harmed, scared, but was not harmed, and did exactly what she should have done, which is to comply. And I would tell anybody that that's exactly what you should do. So from there, I looked into a few things here. One of the things, actually, interestingly enough, on August 14th, I had my first call with a technology company to look at exploring cameras for our community. It's tricky because there's a lot that goes into it, and I've been working with the town manager. We actually had talked about it at the last budget cycle about trying to see how we could make it work. It's expensive, but it is something that's happening now. Santa Fe, Marin Sheriff, Central Marin Police, they all are going to have these systems. I'll have more for the town manager and hopefully for you later on, but it is something that I'm actively working on right now. So. One of the things that I wanted to do is, when this happened, is these things kind of take on a life of their own, and I'm hearing more and more about all kinds of other things that have happened in town. So I went ahead and pulled our numbers, looked at the statistics for this month, and then I went back to 2021, and because I wanted to make sure that we don't have something that's like we're losing control of what's happening here in our town. You can remember last year we did have a small blip of, for lack of better words, of stolen autos that happened, and that was it really when I looked back. In comparing month to month over the years, we were up and down 1 or 2 cases. For example, the year-to-date in burglaries in our town, is 6. Grand theft, the year-to-date is 9. The reason why they're grand thefts is because a lot of the e-bikes are being stolen. Well, they're over $950, which makes them grand theft. Some of these burglaries are e-bikes that were in garages. I guess the message I have really is to, these are crimes of opportunity, not the robbery, of course, but these burglaries and some of these stolen autos are really crimes of opportunities. And so my message would be to secure your stuff. I mean, we just live in a place now where we have to do that. I speak to my graveyard officers, and they see people walking through our town all night long. Some of them are people walking from the hospitals, don't want to walk over the hill back into Santa Fe, want to take an easier route. Some of them are just people out for a walk, and some of them are people looking for an opportunity to steal things. And I'll wrap this up kind of quickly here. I heard 2 days ago, I heard that there was a home invasion in this city. And that was surprising to me because I've worked in a town where we had home invasions. And so I looked into it, and it was somebody who entered into someone's property. They hopped a fence, basically, and they took some items from a carport. It's not a home invasion, it's a theft. It does actually elevate to a burglary because they're entering an enclosed area, but home invasion is way different. So I wanted to dispel that. And then I just heard tonight twice that there was a second robbery in town, and I'm here to tell you that there's not been a second robbery in town. I think what ends up happening is people start talking a little bit, and I would encourage anybody to call me directly. My phone number is 415-453-1453, extension 101. That's right to my desk, and I'll tell you the truth as to what's going on here in town as far as trends go. And that would be it. I just lock your doors. Do not keep your garage car fob in your car if it's parked in front of your house, because that's a way into your house. And call us. We're happy to come by and do an extra patrol around your home. We've done about 700 of them this year already. It's nothing for us to do that. We're already out there. And if there's any business people don't feel safe walking to their car at night, call us. We'll escort you to your car. It's the stuff that we do. And so that's what I have for you.
Thank you, Chief. Any council members have any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Robbins.
Mine is for Town Manager. For the replacement of the bridge at Natalie Coffin Green Park, that's in the town of Ross, so those are town funds, is that right?
Yes.
And will ADR or the council have a chance to weigh in about what it looks like?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Richard Simonich to respond, so you definitely have accurate information.
Yes, when we are ready to select a bridge type, we want to bring them by ADR. We are, however, very limited in what type of prefabricated bridge we can use because the span is so short that the companies that produce these bridges just have a limited design for these short spans. So it's not going to be more than one or two, more than two choices for the type of bridge. But yes, we will bring that to council when we have that, or to ADR.
My concern is it's such a pretty park, and that leads to Three Bear Hut, which is so rustic. And I hope we can preserve that rustic look for the bridge and not have some kind of industrial kind of look of a bridge.
Well, yeah, that'll be for ADR and council to decide what if that is the case. But again, it's going to be limited choices.
Thank you, Councilmember Salter.
Yes, thank you, Chief Pata, for the update. We look forward to your investigation and looking into options with the cameras. I was just going to add one thing, which would be, it might be helpful in maybe the morning after a little corner for the police to have just a little update and what's been going on with crime and just best practices. I think some people who haven't been a victim of crime or haven't talked to people think that the town is so safe. I mean, that's why a lot of people move here, and that you have more of a chance of a deer stealing some vegetables from your backyard than a criminal. So that's why people leave their keys in their cars, and there's a false sense of security, and not many people attend council meetings or watch them. So I think if you wouldn't mind, and if it's a good idea, if the town manager agrees, maybe having a little blurb every month in the morning after about crime trends and what you recommend or what you've learned that the townspeople should know about. Thank you.
Great. Just a quick response to Councilmember Salter. Yes, the chief has had pretty much a monthly, there hasn't been many months we've missed having a column. in the morning after. Oftentimes, it's on the front page to give such tips. I think last month we had one about e-bikes. And then actually, we've had already prepared, the chief has already prepared a follow-up specifically regarding the armed robbery. And that you'll see that in tomorrow's morning after newsletter that goes out tomorrow. So yeah, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. So now we will move on to the Ross Property Owners Association. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the RPOA, or is anyone online?
There's no one online, Mayor.
RPOA? Oh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes.
I was going to do it next month, so I came to watch.
Well, Andy, you know, I came to watch at the RVPA thing, and they gave me the gavel and said, you're presiding, so.
I didn't come prepared for
Okay,
anything.
you're on.
You know, so I'm supposed to come next month, so I came to investigate to see what I was going to do, and now I can see I don't know what I'm going to do. So next month, I'll show you what I'm supposed to do, but I can't give you, anything now. I wish I could, so. We're doing a great job, though. We're working hard. We like that performance out in the park on last Friday. We worked hard for that, and it came off very well. And aside from that, I hope you're happy with our performance.
We are, thank you. Thank you for everything RPOA does. All right, well, onwards. So now that brings us to the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is an agenda of matters that will be considered as a single motion unless any member of the council or any member of the public wishes to have an item removed for separate consideration. So does any member of the council desire to have an item removed?
I have one, which is just the demands. If you wouldn't mind, I just want to have a brief discussion with the town manager, just the demands.
Yes, all right, so we will remove item 8B, and that leaves items 8A, C, and D. Anyone online? Anyone on the council? All right, then we will, is there a motion?
I will move to approve consent agenda items A, C, and D.
Second?
Okay, now it's you. Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem McMillan,
Yes.
Councilmember Dowling.
Yes.
Councilmember Salter,
Yes.
Mayor Kircher,
Yes.
Councilmember Robbins.
Yes.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
So now we'll proceed separately to a separate consideration of item 8B, demands for August 2024.
Just one item, town manager, was that some of the demands are some very sizable payments. And I was wondering if it ever made sense, I'm not sure, and I'm apologizing for bringing this up in the session, but that if we have, obviously we have 2 signatures, and good governance, if it makes sense for a certain threshold, maybe to make sure it's separated and we're all aware of very large payments going out. That's all I was hoping. I don't want to slow down your job or anyone's job. I just want to make sure we're doing good governance in reviewing the larger payments as they go out.
Sure, thank you for your comment. Councilmember Salter, anything over $5,000 requires a second signature. And in Ross, the authorized second signatures are council members, not other staff, because we're so small-staffed that the other members that would be, so for example, our town clerk, Cindy, actually prepares the checks, and so therefore, because she's preparing them, she can't sign them. So I sign all of the checks, and then anything over 5,000 goes to a council member. Mayor Pro Tem McMillan is kind of our go-to because she's been doing it for a while and she's very accessible. So we appreciate that. And what's kind of exciting is because we are going to, in Cindy's hard work with our accountant, has started doing some bill pay, online bill pay, because we want to get away from paper checks as much as we can. So, and that's helpful because now the signers can do it from off-site. Not all of them are on it yet, but, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, it does. When I'm reading the demands, it's sometimes, it's very easy to tell what it's for, other times it's not. So
Yeah.
maybe potentially if there's just a large transaction, of course, I can ask you offline.
Of course.
But it might be helpful just in the disclosure package. I don't know if we separate larger items and just maybe have a note of what it is for, just so that the public or anyone looking at our books would know what the large items are for.
I can talk with our accountant to see if there's a little more information that can be put in this report that goes to the council, but in the meantime, absolutely, any question you have, you should please feel free to send it to me.
Absolutely, okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And with that, I move to, can I move, or is there
Yeah,
another
move
question?
to approve item 8.
Before
B.
it's moved.
I'm sorry,
It's
public.
taken off consent, so we have to open up public.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, we'll open it for public comment. Any public comment on item 8B?
No public comment, Mayor.
All right. Yes.
I was just thinking, Krista, perhaps you could just have a little parenthetical if the amount is for, over like $10,000, just with 2 or 3 words that would provide a little more information to satisfy people. Most of them are pretty obvious, but there might be a couple, and I can help with that if you need me to, or Liz could probably do it.
Yeah, I'll consult with her about if she can just add a little more room with a little more explanation.
Yeah. Okay.
Our system is a little
Cumbersome.
antiquated, but we will look and see what we can do. So for example, Harrison Engineering, $21,000, but it says there, Bolinas Avenue project. So we can try to see if there's more that we can do. Okay.
All right, so we have if there are no further questions, we have a motion. Did we have a second?
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan.
Aye.
Councilmember Dowling.
Aye.
Councilmember Salter.
Aye.
Mayor Kircher.
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins.
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, so that's the end of the consent agenda, and we will proceed now to item 9, public hearings on planning projects, part 1. So item 9A is 21 Loma Linda, design review, nonconformity permit, hillside lot permit, a variance, and town council adoption of resolution number 2433, approving the project subject to conditions.
Good evening, Mayor,
Alex.
council members. Tonight, the homeowner at 21 Loma Linda is requesting approval from the town council for a design review, a hillside lot permit, a nonconformity permit, and a variance. The project is proposing to renovate the existing nonconforming wooden deck, expanding it from 710 square feet to 720 square feet. The project will also include a new fireplace, a seat wall, and a new arbor. At the August ADR hearing, all the ADR members supported the project. We also received 3 letters of support from the neighbors at 230 Wellington Avenue, 220 Wellington, and 70 Wellington. A variance is requested to construct new landscape structures within the rear yard setback and a new rock wall measuring 8 feet in height. Staff requests that the town council consider adopting resolution 2433, approving design review, a hillside lot permit, a nonconformity permit, and a variance. Thank you.
Are there any council questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Then we'll hear from the applicant or the applicant's representative. Does the applicant wish to address the council? I mean, you're not required to, but you do have 15 minutes. for any further comments that you wish to make.
Yes, we do have Brad.
Is there someone
online.
present online? All right.
Brad, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Hi, I'm Brad from Imprints Landscape Architecture, and hopefully people have had a chance to visit the site. And what's there now is basically a wood deck with a large rock wall that's on the uphill side. And what we're asking for is to slightly expand the deck just to straighten out a curving corner, and then put an outdoor fireplace structure to replace the rock wall, and an arbor structure with downlights and mostly to provide shade for this deck, which gets extremely hot with its southern facing exposure. This is a very simple project in comparison to a lot of projects we work on, and I'm mostly here to answer any questions you might have.
All right, but there are no questions at this time from council. Thank you very much. You will have a chance for a rebuttal if you wish to make a further statement after we open this for public comment. So does anyone present here today wish to speak, any member of the public wish to speak with respect to this project? Not seeing anyone in the chambers or in the town hall. Is anyone present online?
There's no one present online.
No raised hands. All right then. Anything further from any member of the council or the applicant? All right, then I will. Well, we're closing public comment. We are bringing this now back to the council.
So I move we approve Resolution 2433.
I second.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Sorry, Mayor. Councilmember Dowling?
Yes.
Councilmember Salter?
Yes.
Mayor Kircher?
Yes, aye.
And Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item 10. Town Council to adopt resolution number 2434 to establish school zone speed limits on 2-lane streets within 500 feet of Ross School located at 900 Lagunitas Road, Ross, California, and the Branson School located at 39 Fernhill Avenue, Ross, California.
Sorry about that. Good evening again, Mayor, members of the council. On August 12th, Public Works Director Simon Itch, myself, the town manager, and I think maybe one of you attended the Safe Routes to School Task Force meeting. And in that meeting, we learned of AB 321 in 2008, a bill that was later signed into law, amending the vehicle code, which allows cities and towns to reduce the speed limit of their streets by school zones. It's pretty specific as to the types of streets that you can do this on. They must be no more than a 2-lane street. And they have to be within 500 feet of a school. So from that meeting, we did some research, and I found other councils and other reports that have gone through, staff reports. I found one from Sacramento, San Francisco, San Anselmo, the County of Marin. And in all those cases, they reduced the speeds of their selected schools from 25 miles an hour to 15 miles per hour. In my staff report, I've attached the law and the proposal itself. In 1999, a study by the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration found that children and adults, bicyclists, people struck by vehicles at a speed slower than 20 miles an hour had a greater chance of survivability and a greater chance to have less severe injuries. that was part of the impetus to create this law, create this bill, which was later passed into law. My proposal is that we reduce the speed limits from 25 miles an hour to 15 miles per hour during school hours, and that includes lunchtime and after-school pickup for the Ross School, the Ross Preschool, and for Branson. One of the things I noticed in this law is that there's no guidance as to where you start and where you stop this 500-foot area. So what we did is we took the front door of the Ross School and we went 500 feet towards the Ross Common. We didn't go in the opposite direction, mainly because there are stop signs, a lot of stop signs that regulate that intersection. So cars, in theory, would have to be slowing anyway to make that stop. The other direction, that's not necessarily the case. For example, from Sir Francis Drake to Shady Lane, there's no stop at all. So that's really was my drive for putting the reduced speed zone in this area. Then we went around the corner from Lagunitas down Ross Common to right around the driveway of the post office. That qualifies because you do have an entry and exit point from the school on that side of the street. The next area that we looked at was the Branson School. And again, there was no indication as to like where we should start and stop. So what we did is I kind of split the driveway and I went 500 feet from the driveway on Park Drive down to Norwood, just before the stop sign. And then from Park Drive towards Glenwood. Thank you. I'm still learning my streets here. Towards Glenwood. And that stops 500 feet from that is right around where the driveway is for their parking area there. So this change is can be made by a local ordinance. It would be my recommendation that you consider reducing the speed to 15 miles an hour during school hours in these two locations. And that is what I have for you.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
Any staff questions at this point?
Chief Pata, just a question.
Yeah.
The post office parking lot, is that the whole parking lot?
Yeah, so it actually, I have a map, I measured it out. I think I've included that in your staff report, but I have another one as well. But it's just, I believe it's just past the driveway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not as far as the wine store?
Nope.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Chief Putt, is there any reason not to do this? Is there any downside to doing this?
So I looked around and reached out to some peers. I could not find any downside to it. Again, some of the questions were, some people had where they felt that this was an enforcement tool to, for us to write more tickets. Really what it is, it's a safety tool for us. Our officers will, obviously the first month or 2 months, we'll do an education campaign to make sure that people understand. And this isn't just for cars, this is for e-bikes, this is for bicyclists, this is for scooters, this is for everybody. So if you're going to be on the road, you have to obey the rules of the road, and so that's our goal.
And is it the entire day that school's in session, or is it, so starting like 7:30 until 3:30 or something?
Yeah, I think actually the school starts at 8:30, so from 8:30 to 3:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will this be a problem for enforcement?
Enforcement's always a little tricky, and it's based on capacity. For example, this month I've reassigned our staff I put as many people as I could on day shift. The beginning of the school year is usually the toughest for us, is getting people to break bad habits. There was something I heard recently about us having a third shift. We don't have 3 shifts at the Ross Police Department. In April, with the graduation of our latest officer into training, it allowed me to have a third position. That position is a supervisor to make sure everybody is supervised from 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. Well, I've reassigned those people to day shift. So there is no 3 positions, just 2. And we can do it. It's just sometimes we get spread thin.
Any other questions?
I just have a question. So if school starts at 8:30, the 15 mile per hour will be before 8:30, right? So
Yes.
7:30 until
Yes.
4 or something.
Yes, and I'll work with Mr. Simonich and the town manager and on signage, because you'll have to put signage up for that.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, absolutely. And one final thing I didn't mention, but this law actually waives our, the necessity of doing a traffic study there. So it's way easier than if we were to do it some other way.
When signs are posted, what are they likely to read? Will it be something like 15 miles an hour when children are present? A statement I've always found to be somewhat ambiguous.
Right.
You mean present on the sidewalk, on the playground?
Right, exactly. So the language is, excuse me, the language is actually in the law what we have to put on the sign, and it is kind of ambiguous. It just is. But my goal is not to add more signage, is maybe change out what we have or add to the ones that we have. So, yeah. And again, I'll work with Mr. Simonich on that.
Town Manager Johnson, it is late.
You're elevating
Thank you.
me. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that I did receive emails that I forwarded on to the council from Chris Mazzola, who's head of school at Branson, and Ross School Superintendent David Rice. They're very enthusiastic, supportive of this measure.
All right, well, if there's no other further questions from council members, I'll open this for public comment. Is anyone present in the town hall who wishes to be heard? Is anyone present online?
There is no one online, Mayor.
All right, then I'll close this for public comment. Any council discussion or a motion?
So I will move to adopt resolution number 2434.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan.
Aye.
Councilmember Dowling.
Aye.
Councilmember Salter.
Aye.
Mayor Kircher.
Aye.
And Councilmember Robbins.
Aye.
The measure passes with 5-0.
All right, very good. So now we will move on to item 11, Town Council to discuss and provide direction to staff and to the Advisory Design Review Group on pickleball court regulation options.
Good evening, Mayor Kircher and council members. As mentioned, this item is a discussion on regulating pickleball courts on private property in residential zones. So tonight's recommendation is that the town council discuss and provide direction to staff and the ADR on pickleball court regulation options. So during the April 4th, 2024 Town Council meeting, Council members Robbins and McMillan requested that town staff review the need for regulations on the construction of private pickleball courts and the potential noise disturbances they may create. Based on satellite imagery, planning staff can provide a ballpark figure of sports courts on private property in Ross. There's about 11 tennis courts, 7 basketball courts, and 3 smaller courts, possibly for badminton. Pursuant to Ross General Plan, Chapter 5.7, Noise Standards for Exterior Residential Use Areas, the noise limit for exterior use areas is set at 55 decibels, and this is weighted within a 24-hour average noise level. The noise resulting from a game of pickleball travels at a higher frequency and sound level than tennis, which potentially makes it more irritating to listeners. Cities such as Torrance, California, Centennial in Colorado, and Park City, Utah are among some of the cities which have specific regulations related to private pickleball courts. In Park City, they prohibit pickleball entirely within 150 feet of residential property lines. In Centennial, it's 250 feet. Both cities require property owners to attain conditional use permits. That conditional use permit would then include the requirement for a noise study and mitigation to make sure that the noise levels are within the 55 decibel range. Torrance also requires a conditional use permit. So for local jurisdictions in Corte Madera, Mill Valley, San Anselmo, Berkeley, Los Altos, Atherton, and Hillsborough, there are currently no requirements for a use permit to construct private pickleball courts. Now, that could vary from reasons. It's not necessarily that it was discussed or considered. Sometimes maybe due to their lot size, it just hasn't been an issue. In Tiburon, they do require a sound study to be completed prior to the construction of a pickleball court to ensure that it would pose minimal noise disturbances. And then in Corte Madera, they are constructing soundproofing fencing and barriers to mitigate noise for pickleball courts that they're constructing, along with a skate park at their town park. They do not, however, have established regulations for private pickleball courts. In terms of noise mitigation, they frequently include soundproofing walls or placing acoustic panels around the court, or having low-density soundproofing material for the floor court. There's also the use of quieter paddles and balls, although that would be an enforcement regulation that could be difficult. In terms of soundproofing, we did find that the soundproofing material could cost $25,000 and then the wall up to $90,000. And so the high costs of those noise barriers could pose an accessibility issue. In Belvedere, they used to require the use of the noise mitigating paddles. They don't do that anymore because it was hard for them to enforce. In Mill Valley, they mandate for tennis courts that they not exceed 70 decibels between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. on any day. And also with that, their staff expressed that this regulation was difficult for them to enforce. And then also, just as an aside, during the August 17th, 2022 Tiburon Town Council meeting, one of their council members, so Council Member Fredericks, shared that she lives above the Tiburon Peninsula Club and is frequently disturbed by the noise from the tennis courts there. And so to block this unwanted noise, she installed noise mitigating curtains in her home, which also shows that mitigation can work from both the source and the receptor. So for tonight, staff has a few options, and I can walk you through them, hopefully try to guide your conversation and discussion on this. The first one is to prohibit pickleball courts within 250 feet of residential property lines. I will caveat that by saying that if you go with option one, that would include most of the lots in Ross. There may only be a handful or less that would be able to meet that 250-foot condition. And then another option is amending the municipal code and adding pickleball courts to the list of uses requiring a use permit. And what that would do is then allow the requirement for a noise study and mitigation to make sure that they're able to meet the 55 decibel standard along the property line. And lastly, you may also provide policy guidance to the ADR group and pause the review of private pickleball courts until a policy or ordinance is adopted. I will say that there are currently in our queue 2 sports courts that are likely to go before the ADR in the October meeting. And so thus far, staff has not received any complaints on any existing pickleball courts, and we are requesting direction from the town council on regulations for private pickleball courts due to the possible noise disturbances as requested during the April 4th town council meeting. So I'll be happy to help as best I can with any questions you have.
I'll just start from the right. Councilmember McMillan.
Thank you. That was a really good presentation, and I thought the staff report was excellent, too. It was very thorough, so thank you for all that work, and I think Charlotte helped with that, so that's great.
Yes, I definitely like to thank Charlotte DeForest because she did a lot of the legwork and research on this topic.
So when you say staff has not received any noise complaints about pickleball courts, are you referring only to the public courts?
There may be some people who play pickleball on their own private courts that they currently have, presumably, but there haven't been any complaints if that is the case.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, great report. I wanted, when you say sports court, is a sports court for tennis or pickleball, or, so it could be used for anything? Because you can sort of convert a tennis court to a pickleball court, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So sometimes they're drawn as tennis courts or basketball courts, but basically the sports court would allow them to play any sport.
Okay. And so there's 2 requests now in the queue to develop a sports court, but we don't know if they're going to do pickleball on those.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So my question had to do with the town already regulates noise with the 55 decibel standard, correct?
That's correct.
But I believe that's averaged over a period of time, is that right?
That's right. So it is a weighted average within 24 hours.
So if we're looking at the noise from pickleball, because obviously this isn't pickleball, it's that pickleball is noisy and there's a concern about noise, would we be looking at the maximum noise with each, paddle whack and not average a game over 24 hours? Like, how would we do that? Because I think that the 55 decibels might not be adequate to protect residents if there's a pickleball court nearby, because it could be 70, 80 decibels off and on for 20 minutes or 3 hours or however long they play, but over 24 hours, it could meet that threshold. So if we wanted to use a decibel gauge, would we change that so that it's just the maximum from any game?
So the way I've seen it in a noise study is that they take maybe an hour or 2, or they set a time for when that game would take place, and then they take that noise reading. It's pretty technical, but I'll explain it as best I can, and then they weight it with the ambient noise, which could just be traffic and wind, and then they calculate based on that with a barrier what that noise would be. So based on our research, if there's no barrier or no mitigation, it would be over that 55 decibel standard. You wouldn't be able to play pickleball unless you're 250 feet away and still be at that 55 decibel standard. So my recommendation would be that that is sufficient, because the numbers and the studies show that you wouldn't be able to meet that even if you're only playing pickleball for an hour.
Councilmember Salter.
So did you look at all at, there are obviously these paddles and new balls that have come out. Have there been studies of the equipment and the equipment that's going to be created, which we don't know, to try to lower the noise?
Yes, and so in terms of the equipment using the quieter paddles and balls, the challenge there is the enforcement. So hypothetically, if we get a call or a complaint, it would be challenging to verify, someone could do a switcheroo, right? Like, it would be a challenge to verify that they have these quieter paddles or balls and are strictly using that equipment.
Councilmember Dowling.
If there's a use permit, if there's a request for a use permit, then two things would happen. There would be a sound study, and then there would be mitigation. What does that mean, mitigation?
In most cases, the mitigation would be a type of sound barrier, usually a wall or a solid fence without gaps, something that would essentially block the travel of the noise so that when it gets to the property line, it would meet that 55 decibel threshold.
Thank you.
And that's the $25,000 to $90,000 number that you're mentioning.
Those are, yes, ballpark figures, but that is.
Do we have any idea how many people with existing courts are using them for pickleball?
So we only know how many courts we have, but it's challenging to determine which ones have converted them or if they use them as pickleball courts. That's a little bit more of a detailed research that we would have to entail. But again, there's about 20 courts, a little over. Some of them are basketball, tennis, badminton, but it's easy to convert a tennis court to pickleball, right?
Yeah, so are you seeking guidance on these two projects that are coming up, or are you seeking guidance on, are we going to go back and regulate existing courts as well? What are you thinking?
That's a good question. So that is also up for discussion by the council, whether the regulations would be prospective, meaning it's moving forward, or if you'd like to do that retroactive. And in that case, if there is a retroactive, that's something we would have to further research with the town attorney on the legalities of that, because we would basically have to look at what was approved for each existing court.
Go ahead.
So if we, because of the noise of pickleball, if we make regulations now to limit pickleball, say by, 250 feet plus or minus the use permit, and things change with pickleball, we could go back in a year or two and reevaluate this. Is that right?
That's correct. You can always make amendments to the zoning code, correct?
Did someone else have a question? I have a couple of questions. You mentioned there are a couple of projects that are pending for hearing before the ADR design review group. And then, as I recall, there was also an issue with 2 Bellagio, which we considered, and we did approve a sports court, but with the condition that there would be no pickleball use without some further action, because we were still considering our policy. So would that bring the total to 3? Okay. Or 3 possibly with regard to Bellagio if they want to move forward. All right, so as to those 3 properties, you mentioned that there's only a handful of properties that could probably meet the 250-foot requirements. Are any of those 3 properties, to your knowledge, ones that could meet the 250 feet? Or would they, depending on what we decide today, possibly be required to get a use permit or comply with some other conditions?
So of those 3, none of them would meet the 250-foot distance requirement. For 2 Bellagio, I believe the condition essentially stated that any regulations on pickleball, they would be subject to that. So they can play other sports, but if they wanted to have a pickleball court, any regulations imposed by the council would apply to that project.
And then the 250-foot requirement that I've seen references to sometimes refers to nearby, residential properties, sometimes refers to a property line. I mean, what are we talking about here? The applicant's property line? Because, there could be other neighbors who are not adjacent who would be affected by this. On the other hand, there are properties where, let's say a pickleball court was right at the edge of the property, but there is no other property beyond that. There's a road or a hillside or some cliff or something that's not developable. I mean, do you have any comment on that situation?
So that is correct. Typically in planning, when you regulate a use, it's to the property line, only because there could be special circumstances for a number of properties that are potentially unforeseeable. So that's correct. There could be a house that's set further away and maybe not that close to the property line. However, regulating based on distance to a house or maybe adding special circumstances like topography or distance would pose a challenge in terms of enforcement and also analysis. So typically, our noise standard is taken at the property line. So in this case, that would be my recommendation, is to continue with the 55 decibel at the property line as the town has been enforcing.
What I'm struggling with is if you're trying to mitigate this so 250 feet away, it's down to 55 decibels. I mean, how do you do that when there's a cliff or something there? It seems like it could be unworkable. We have so many odd-shaped lots and such differing topography that is always cropping up as an issue with our planning decisions.
That's correct. So in terms of the use permit process, that's where the noise study would come in. Essentially, the applicant, if they're interested in a pickleball court, would hire a noise expert or engineer. They would run the analysis, make the mitigation suggestions, such as a wall or a sound barrier, to ensure that the noise wouldn't be over the 55 decibel threshold at the property line.
At the property line?
That's correct.
Regardless of who or what was on the other side? I mean, at some point in this process, does someone have some discretion to say, gee, I don't think it really matters here, or we're going to give you the use permit only, or is that us?
So the use permit process.
Would come to us. Well, a lot of things we can, zoning decisions, we can grant variances or sometimes exceptions depending on the case. And I would think that if we do anything, there ought to be some objective standards, but there ought to be some ability to under certain circumstances, to make exceptions or grant use permits anyway. I guess what I'm struggling with is this all seems kind of vague to me, and I know you're looking to us for direction, but Councilmember McMillan.
I have one more question, and that is, how many public pickleball courts do we currently have in Frederick Allen Park?
4.
And each one can accommodate 4 players, right? So that means 16 people could be playing pickleball at the public courts at the same time. Okay, thank you.
I have another question. If we try to rein in the noise of pickleball by taking the 250-foot, you can't, a court has to be 250 feet from the property line. Does this apply to some of the institutions in town? Like, I don't know if Cedars has tennis courts, but Branson has a court, and the Lagunitas Club has courts. So would this apply to those places also?
So currently, the discussion is for private pickleball courts in residential zones. So I would have to check the zoning for Cedars and the Lagunitas Country Club. If they're not in a residential zoning, it would not include them.
I see, and if they are, oh, then this would apply.
Correct.
And if they weren't, does the town noise standard apply to them, that it's 55 feet at the property line?
Yes.
So 55 decibels at the property line?
Yes, so the noise standard is for exterior uses in residential areas.
Oh, that's also residential, okay,
Exactly. Mhm.
thank you.
So just the maps right here, all those places are in residential zones.
Okay.
And so I'm also wondering about our own court with, that we would now prevent pickleball from our own court, which is also. Yeah, it's Poplars right there, R1.
I believe it's in the blue. I can't see the, so I don't think that the public
Yeah, so you're
courts
right.
are in
See,
the
it's a civic
residential.
district for that.
Okay.
But the Branson School and the Lagunitas Club are definitely in the residential.
Well, there are,
I have
excuse
a-
me, I'm sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I do have a question about the public courts that we have, where there's 4 pickleball courts and people can be playing like crazy. Have you ever done a sound study? There are 5 or so houses along right next to the court, right next to it. Not 250, but right next to it. It might be worth trying that. And it sounds like you haven't had any complaints from those 5 or 6 houses.
I was trying to decide just how far they were, because while I wouldn't call this complaint, I have heard from people who live in that area that they can hear the pickleball. Again, they weren't trying to complain,
No,
but they were hearing it.
trust me, I
you
live
have-
in one of those
okay.
houses.
Oh, okay.
And I can hear the pickleball. My husband's and my attitude is that it's the recreation area, it's the city's property, and so we've never complained. It's nice to hear people having fun. But some of our neighbors, where their bedrooms are right against the back, it's a problem for them, and they haven't complained. But I think they didn't know that they could complain, so.
I went to those courts today to hear the sound, and I downloaded on my phone the Decibel app, and there was a leaf blower going on, and there was traffic going on, and people were talking, and the people who were playing pickleball had pretty loud country music going on. So it was all kind of, mushed together. I couldn't really discern the specific ping off the paddle. But because there's so much other noise, it didn't seem like the pickleball was so distracting. And I worry about putting pickleball in areas where there's bigger lots, because they're going to be in canyons, and I think it's going to be much noisier than in the area where Frederick Allen Park is. And it's going to be bouncing around, and there's not going to be all this other ambient noise. So the residents are going to be focused on that ping, 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 because there's not going to be a lot of other distraction. That wasn't framed as a question, I'm sorry.
That wasn't a question. This is really time, for questions of staff. We will now, if council members have no more comments, we will open this to public discussion, hear from the public, and then bring it back to council for further discussion. So would anyone like to be heard? Would anyone like to be heard? Yes, please. Come, a gentleman here, and then please come to the podium, and you have 3 minutes, or over here. Thank you. Yes, please. Yeah, if you would state your name and if you wish, your address, and then you have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
My name is Robert Ludlow. I'm here with my wife, Sandra. We moved to Ross about a year ago, and we live in one of those quiet canyons where you hear crickets and frogs at night. So first of all, I want to thank the council and the mayor for addressing this issue. I think there are lots of towns and municipalities that are sidestepping it. So thank you for giving it your serious consideration. We would like to express our opposition to allowing pickleball courts in residential areas because of the noise nuisance that they represent. We think that pickleball is a use that is not consistent with the town's ordinances and their design guidelines. Ordinance 920-010, for example, prohibits, and I quote, any unnecessary noises or sounds which are annoying to persons of ordinary sensitiveness. I consider myself ordinarily sensitive. And the town's adopted design guidelines include an overreaching design principle to respect neighboring properties and prioritize privacy. So many of our friends play pickleball, and it's a fine sport, but it is a known source of offensively loud noise. And it's not just the volume, it's the frequency and the intensity of the noise. And many municipalities have recognized this. The town has existing municipal ordinances that prohibit crowing roosters, loud musical instruments, or loud machinery. So I feel that it would be entirely consistent with the intent of maintaining a peaceful small town atmosphere to update the town's ordinances to prohibit pickleball. It's an activity that would undoubtedly be disturbing to neighbors. And I would like to add that considering the options that are put forward tonight, which are basically to control it through distance or through decibel readings, I work as an architect and a forensic consultant. Trying to establish a decibel reading is extremely difficult and technically complex, and tends to just lead to warring parties of different acoustic experts about what the decibel level is at the property line. So it can become very costly and contentious and litigation. So on that basis, I would propose that you go for something that is a simple distance requirement so that owners of properties know where they stand, neighbors know where they stand, and it's clear and easy to enforce. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Who is present? Yes, please.
I am Dennis Mirren here with my lovely wife Zara. And we are the house right between the two pickleball courts that are coming up. So we have it from the left, we have it from the right. The New York Times, as everyone probably knows, says the most grating and disruptive sound in the entire athletic ecosystem right now may be the staccato pop, 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 emanating from America's rapidly multiplying pickleball courts. And it's all over the place, the objections to it. But you get into a small, quiet area like what we have, and the gentleman who just spoke, where you can hear the birds chirping and the frogs and all that sort of thing, and you're going to hear the pickleball court. It's going to be right there. It's completely different than being down between Poplar and Laurel Grove, around Sir Francis Drake, where there's this traffic going on. You can kind of hear it. So just to reiterate briefly, the things we're talking about is the pop, not the general thing of pickleball. There's the yelling and screaming, but that pop is what is like a machine. It's like out of the old cartoon where the machine's just pumping out some boom, boom, boom. So you get your mind in a sort of a peaceful area reading something or other, but you're reminded, no, 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 it's boom, boom going on. And the concerns, of course, among the sound is the loudness in decibels. And by the way, the meter, the little apps you get for your phones, iPhones cannot read the speed or the volume of a pickleball ball hit. It averages out. So if you get a high instrument that experts use, they can find them, it's more like, I don't know, it's like between 1,000 hits or volumes of mega, whatever it is, in that period that won't be read on your iPhone. because it averages, the iPhone averages out over a time. So there's a lot of studies about how high and intense that volume really is. The frequency which drives people crazy, of course. The impulsiveness of it, you don't know where it's coming from and when the next one is, and the repetition, like I said, just over and over and over again. So I appreciate everyone's looking at it, and I don't play pickleboard, but if I was younger, I would. But there's courts all over the place that people can go to play, and very near here. And the times we've been by those courts, they're not full, and maybe they are a lot of the time, but I don't know. Anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, please.
Well, here I am again.
Welcome back.
I have to say, I'm not a bit nervous, but man, I'm freezing, so I might feel like I'm representing the Lagunitas Club because we are in a residential area. We have a use permit, and we have 2 pickleball courts. We have a total of 6 tennis courts, of which 1 tennis court we didn't convert in the sense that you can still play tennis there. We put lines in so you could play pickleball, and we've been playing for a little over a year, I think. And it's been very successful in the following way. Tremendous usage, and it's gotten a lot of people out that weren't playing sports for a long time, so it's useful for that, both men and women, young and old. Secondly, very important, we have not had 1 complaint from anyone. Mary, you had mentioned the topography. That makes a big difference. In certain places, you can hear it probably better than in other places, not as much. Also, at the Lagunitas Club, we have self-regulated. We put in our own hours. You can't play before 9 a.m., and you can't play after 6 p.m. So, we've sort of gotten ahead of that. But again, we haven't had 1 complaint from 1 neighbor. It's used on a regular basis, and if we were, so we would be, we are opposed to any of these sort of regulations that are being considered. At 250 feet, it would be virtually impossible for us to have a pickleball court there, and I would say that's probably true of almost any other residence in the town of Ross. And I would also say it was a very good report, for sure, but I don't think that you can use as a comp Torrance or Salt Lake City. Those are big communities with a lot of people. We're talking about a much smaller area, so in terms of comping that, I think it's very different. So we would be opposed to that. It's been wonderful for people playing of all ages. We are members of the town of Ross. I mean, a good deal of our members are Ross residents. And even when we have a guest to play with, occasionally those are Ross residents. So you would be really affecting the neighborhood in the town of Ross if we were to say prohibit us from going forward for playing the way we are now. So the point is, Lagunitas Club would be opposed to any of those kinds of restrictions. We're there already. It's being used on a regular basis, and we haven't had any complaints whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Zara. Dennis introduced the sound problem, the very particular sound problem of pickleball. And it's arising in communities all over the states as a, not plenty, but very particular protest nearby at Point Tiburon Marsh Condo Association. They protested the conversion of tennis courts to pickleball, and they have been stopped. The reason cited: loss of the peaceful enjoyment of decks and patios, the negative effect on property values should those courts be built, based on experience of the nearby courts that were converted. The litigation that's occurred, an example of that at Falmouth, Massachusetts Recreation Department, built pickleball courts. A man 350 feet away and neighbors protested, filed a lawsuit claiming that pickleball courts violated the town's own bylaws that prohibit daily injurious and noxious noise levels, and they won. There's a temporary injunction on those courts, and they are currently closed. In making this focused study of pickleball, the town is putting the horse before the cart and giving us a chance to lead our own, what we want in our environment. And we feel very strongly positive about the option 1, prohibiting pickleball within 250 feet of residential property lines. There is, however, the science shows that there is a fall of 6 decibels only with a doubling of distance. At 250 feet, we're only down to 61 to 62 decibels. So in order to get to 55 decibels, there needs to be more than the 250. And we see this being done in the town staff report. The examples of Centennial City, Colorado, Torrance, California, and Park City, Utah, have imposed a prohibition to 50 feet. And Centennial, Colorado, and Park City, Utah, have made a margin beyond to 600 feet, which is the place at which sound by natural attenuation comes to 55. Please consider these examples as you make policy. And thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Councilmember Kuhl has been waiting. Welcome back.
Somebody
to
left
the
some
former
glass.
guy.
My name's Beach Cool, and I'm a Ross resident. I live right across the street from a tennis court which has been lined for pickleball, so that I have firsthand knowledge, not some worry about what it might be, but what it is. We can hear the noise of pickleball, of the ball being stricken, but I assure you it is not something that is upsetting. It is not something that distracts me from reading or whatever activity I'm engaged in. And I think that it's a mistake to get into this kind of thing for this council to do this. I think if you want to control noise in Ross, if that's the purpose here, you ought to think about controlling the noise of construction. Construction noise goes on all day, not just an hour or two. Construction noise is much more annoying than hearing the sound of a pickleball hit. And I think this is one of those situations where you are trying to create a problem that doesn't now exist, and you're going to have more problems enforcing. By the way, if I understood what one of the proposals, it was that these regulations would be related to private property. I take it we're not going to enforce it on our own public courts. That's not fair. So at least if you're going to do something, you should do the same thing to the public courts. Put up some fences around them, sound barriers, or whatever you're going to do. But it is not appropriate to do something, to tell the public they've got to do something on their property that the town is not willing to do on its. I hope you'll consider this very carefully, because I think you're walking into a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else present here this evening have a comment? And if not, is there anyone online?
There are no hands raised, Mayor.
All right. Then if there's no further public comment from those present, we will bring this back to the council for discussion and possibly action.
Well, I already tipped my hand, so, right? I,
You
I,
tipped your hand?
yeah, I made a comment instead of a question.
Oh, well, then you can't say anything
I,
else.
yeah, so no, I'll come back, but, I mean, I think the public courts are fine. They're not in a residential area. There's enough other ambient noise. What really worries me is these more isolated areas like Canyon. I walk my dog there all the time. It's super quiet except for all the constructions going on and the trucks going up and down. But that is temporary. That will end. Pickleball will keep going, right? And I think we should not take that right away from the Lagunitas Club. We've already given them that right. So I don't see that us taking a right away. And I also feel like it would be really difficult to go back and take stuff away from people who already have these courts. That sounds like a really bad PR move and a nightmare. And I don't even know if we could legally do that. But I think for upcoming courts, proposed courts, I am not in favor of allowing those courts, especially in the areas where they're currently being contemplated. And in light of the fact that we have 4 public courts that can accommodate 16 people, just get in your car or get on your bike or walk down the street and play at the existing court. I think also if you put up sound walls, and that's pretty hideous. When you're walking by, you're just going to see this huge walled area. Do you have to put a sound thing on the top too, or is it just the side? I think that's going to be really hideous. So those are my views.
So I think that it's, that the noise of pickleball really is a problem. And I don't think it's unreasonable to try to regulate the noise. And many communities have done that, and many that haven't are likely to do that. I think from what we've heard, making a guideline that pickleball can't be played on a court that's within 250 feet of a property line in a residential area is reasonable. I think that should apply to all courts that are currently in town. And pickleball's a new game and a new sound problem. So it's not as though, people have been playing pickleball on their sports courts for the last 50 years. I mean, this is sort of a new emerging problem. And I don't know that you could say, well, you have your court striped and you don't, so you get to keep playing pickleball and you don't. I think that the problem is noise, not who has a court and who doesn't. So I would suggest that we not allow pickleball within 250 feet of a property line, and people who are building new courts, they can build them anywhere, but they can't play pickleball if it's within 250 feet. Though I think that we would want to reconsider this if the equipment changes, because if it no longer is a noisy sport, there's no reason not to play it anywhere. I agree about the town courts. They're not in a residential district. But if we hear complaints, I think we would want to address that and maybe mitigate that sound. For the Lagunitas Club, I think that's a little bit different from an existing sports court in a neighborhood because it's an existing sports club. But I wonder if maybe we would ask if they have a use permit, and if there are, huge, if noise becomes a problem for the neighborhood, then we would ask them to mitigate it, but they could keep playing pickleball with a use permit. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how do you do something different with the Lagunitas Club, because it is a sports club and they do play sports and they've been playing pickleball and it sounds like they haven't had complaints. So maybe there's the option of having a use permit for them, but for all the other residences, all of the other residential areas, I think that option 1, limiting it to we have a 250 feet distance is reasonable.
Right, man.
Well, I was very pleased to hear the voice of Beach Cool return to this council. And I remember watching many, many council meetings where Beach said that a government that governs least governs best. And so what I'm hearing from all of you is, well, pickleball noise is annoying. Nobody is going to disagree. It's loud, it's a problem, people don't like it. It's a noise problem. But how to regulate that noise is a very difficult task. And I honestly don't think any of us can figure this out. And I actually think that this is why there are so few examples of very good policy out there, because this is a very challenging question. And I don't think it's going to be answered tonight. And what I do think, at a minimum, we have to do is, if we're going to be a governing body, we have to govern judiciously across all of our town. And hearing these things that, oh, well, I like the Lagunitas Club, let's exempt them. And oh, I like our public courts, well, let's exempt them. But no, I don't like that in the canyon. I mean, that's not a law. That is favoritism. That is opening us up for tons of litigation of how we chose to decide to allow this and not that. We happen to live in a very difficult area of topography. There's canyons, there's hills, there's flat areas. There's no way you're going to come up with a uniform. I don't believe we can come up with a uniform concept here. I think 250 feet is absurd, because we're then just saying basically there's only like 3 or 4 parcels that this is allowed in, which effectively we're now blanketing the entire town and saying you can't do this. And guess what? I may be the youngest member here, but some people are having fun. And I want to think back to when maybe pools first came out. You know, when someone first dug a pool. And I'm sure there's lots of people who complained and said, oh my God, the noise, and kids are splashing and playing, and then there's the pool equipment and that makes noise. So no pools, because we want to hear the birds chirp. So we would have no pools. And you know what's happened around this town over the years? Certain people have been exempted to allow their pool within the setbacks, and certain people haven't. And I think that the reason why this council over many years, there's been a lot of problems, is there is favoritism. And there is this notion that we should govern with conditional use permits where we allow and choose and pick and choose who is allowed to do what. And I'm fundamentally against that. I think we need to come up with a policy that's fair and reasonable for all residents, and including ourselves in that. Our courts need to be just as equal as a private citizen. We are no different. And if we want to say no pickleball in the whole town, fine. Then we don't have it on our courts either. And neither does the Lagunitas Club, and neither does Branson. We need to be fair. And that is the purpose. So I think that this is not, my suggestion would be to table this till we can do some more studies, and maybe we get more input from residents on what they're feeling, because we've heard from 5 or 6 people here. But this is a very complicated and difficult issue and very hard to regulate in this town. So I'm opposed to anything right now. I think we table it, or at a minimum, we say that we will look at things on a case-by-case basis, because I don't think we're in a position to make a rule. Thank you.
Can I just make one comment? I've been on the council for 10 years now. I honestly do not think there's favoritism. When there are swimming pools that are granted, some families get a variance, it's often because, yes, the pool might be in the setback, but there's a fence and then there's a road and there's nobody nearby. I think that the staff and the council have been very careful to try to be fair, but to make exceptions when there's a reason to make an exception. So I don't think there's favoritism. I just wanted to say that.
Councilmember Gowan.
Yeah, I was just, it's so complicated, and I agree with you, Beach. Thank you for keeping things simple. I have trouble with the 250 feet. It really means that maybe 3 homeowners who have a huge lot could put in a pickleball court, nobody else. So I'm not inclined to support the 250 feet. I think the conditional, the use permit is maybe more acceptable, but it's going to be costly in terms of time. It's a little more complicated. It's going to cost people money. It's going to cost people time. So I think I might be more inclined to say, we need to do more work on this, and I would table it. But I wouldn't table it and do nothing. I would table it and let's get working on it to try to figure out what are some reasonable options that aren't going to be so complicated for the community, but also respects. And I got to say, I really appreciate the people who spoke tonight. And I appreciate the research that you did. It was very helpful, and I'm glad that you shared that with the council even before the meeting tonight. So I want to respect their desire for privacy, and yet still make sure that we're not overcomplicating things.
One additional comment I want to make is any new technology always stumbles. And this is a new game, and I think that I would not be surprised if the pickleball powers that be come out with new, quieter equipment, because this is a known problem. So I don't know, it's more like more fundamental philosophy of like AI, everyone's really scared, and whenever a new technology comes out, there's a lot of fear. This is a new game, and everybody is complaining about the noise. So nobody's going to say that there's not noisy and it's a nuisance. I think we all agree on that. But could this be in a year solved by the industry itself, where they just, or we ban the equipment and say, hey, you can't use these, you can't use these paddles and you can't use these balls, versus, people just fundamentally start to come out with softer, quieter equipment because everyone's complaining. We're not the only people dealing with this.
Well, we can't wait that long. We have to make some decisions.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm just saying that it may be solved by itself, is what I'm saying.
But it's not solved now. I mean, now it's a problem. And, anyone who's playing pickleball, it's pretty much violating the town's noise ordinance, except that the noise ordinance averages over 24 hours, which makes no sense. Probably everyone would like a better noise ordinance so that there's less noise from anything.
And if we acknowledge that it's noisy and annoying and a nuisance, why would we allow it to be in these residential areas? I don't understand why we would perpetuate a problem like that. It doesn't make sense to me.
And also, I don't think we're like, when you mentioned, the rules ought to apply to everyone. I don't know that they have to apply, to public institutions unless there's a problem. It's not like I love the Lagunitas Club and I think they should be exempt. It's just that because of what they do, I think it's not unreasonable to see if there's a way to have their pickleball continue if there aren't complaints, and if there are, noise can be mitigated, because that's different from a residential neighborhood. It's different from a canyon. It's different from your next door neighbor having a pickleball court that you hear a lot. So I don't think it's wrong to address the public spaces a little differently from the residential spaces.
And I would just want to say that I would hate to take it on a case-by-case basis, because that would instill huge favoritism. That's like how the Hillside Lot Ordinance used to be, and there used to be this catch-all for excellence of design. And if you went over what the prescription was, but you had excellence of design based on whose opinion? Your friend, then you got to have a lot more square footage. So I don't want to go down that path. We would not be giving the ADR people any guidance. I think it would open up a huge can of worms. And I don't know, I'm looking at Roberta. I think Bill's the tiebreaker here. But it seems like I don't know how you're going to get more information or more guidance from us. It seems like we're just kind of spinning around here.
And Beach, I certainly respect Beach's opinion, but, he's one resident. And I think that, I can't say for sure, but from what I've understood about pickleball, most people aren't as comfortable hearing that whack, whack, whack.
No, but we didn't hear, what about banning the equipment and only requiring that there's the softballs and the soft.
But we did hear from staff that.
She said someone could do a switcheroo, but.
But yeah, then it becomes an enforcement issue where my next door neighbor is a jerk and using the bad equipment, and I'm calling Chief Pata to say, my neighbor is being a jerk, and when the Chief Pata or his, deputy arrives, the guy switched out the equipment.
Okay, let's say you video recorded
No,
them playing.
it doesn't, we don't want to get into that.
I think that's right. We've heard from both Roberta, but also some of the staff, some of the summaries from the other reports that enforcing quieter equipment doesn't work. I think that, I mean, it may be that there will be quieter equipment in the nearest future, but, you know, it's not there now, so I don't think that's an option.
Well, I'm just going to add that Lagunitas Club there's homes right across the street from it. This is not, it's not in a different zone. It's absolutely, and so is Branson. So I hear you. In a perfect world, I would love to say, hey, let's exempt certain areas where these are known places that people recreate, like our courts, like their courts. But again, we're applying a standard that's different, and it's terribly unfair.
Well, so that's where I would wonder, would we consider a use permit for those public areas so that we could be sure that their pickleball isn't annoying neighbors? Whereas I would go with a 250-foot limit for all the residential areas, but for the existing public institutions, maybe there would be a way of having a use permit so that we could be sure that their noise is reasonable and that it's not bothering the neighbors. So I wouldn't just give them a pass.
Well, and it sounds like the Lagunitas Club already, in effect, is having their own use permit by regulating the hours, right? From 9 to 6.
So what if we created a policy of regulating hours, just like they're doing?
I don't think that's enough. I think that, I don't think that's going to really change. I don't think that's enough to take care of the noise of pickleball. I mean, if you say it's 9 to 6, that's all day long. I mean, nobody wants that. No one wants, people don't want that in their backyards.
Yeah, and you're going to have trouble with regulating that piece.
Well, okay, we have to leave the enforcement because anytime that a suggestion is like, well, we can't enforce that. We're not enforcing. There's leaf blowers every day from the gardeners all over town that are not electric. I hear them. I see them. We're not enforcing that. So again, are we finding a problem where there is none? I hear that people are complaining about some of, there are only 13 courts right now. Are we creating this ordinance when we actually don't need it? And now we have ordinances already on leaf blowers that we're not enforcing. So where is the problem? Somebody, you know, I don't know that we have this overwhelming issue with pickleball. I'm glad that people have brought this up, but I would say leaf blowers is way worse than pickleball. And why aren't we citing the gardeners and going after them? So I think we're creating this problem, and trying to do it case by case is a problem. Trying to have a universal 250 feet means nobody gets it. So I'm asking, what I'm saying is we have to table this. I know nobody likes that, but it's just, there's a reason why there might be a better case study that comes out from another town that's tackling this. I just don't think we're gonna solve it. I really don't.
I just don't know where tabling gets us. I mean, I don't know that there's new or better information that our staff and our residents haven't come up with. So I feel like, you know, this is what we know about the noise and about whether to regulate it and how to regulate it. I don't think that, you know, that there's more information.
But it's an opinion. So as Beach pointed out, he lives next to a court, doesn't bother him. There's people next to the Lagunitas Club, doesn't bother him.
Let's
So
let everybody
it
have a
depends
say.
on where they live and their opinion of the noise.
We're trying to let everybody have a chance to speak rather than back and forth. So, Julie. Did you?
Yeah, you have to talk.
Gosh, I don't know. No, you know, I'm sitting here as the mayor, and I'm thinking, is there a way to kind of put together a consensus here? Because sometimes that's the mayor's role. And what I'm hearing is we've got 2 votes for restrictions, a ban perhaps, or an effective ban with the 250 feet. We've got 2 requests to table this or continue it for further information, but without any direction to staff as to what further information we may think would cause a different decision. My inclination, frankly, is I don't really feel like we have enough information to make a decision, but we're often in that situation. We were there with short-term rentals. We had partial information. We didn't really have a consensus, and we had concerns about, well, this is going to be too difficult to enforce. I mean, you can say that about anything, speed limits, leaf blowers, whatever. It doesn't mean we don't do it. Sometimes these things, while they're hard to enforce, they still set a standard. Some people will actually obey the law. If we tell people, you must use these paddles, some people actually will. There are paddles that are very quiet. They cost $230 each, but some people will. But yes, there will always be people who won't. But, you know, there's no solution for that. Does anybody who's suggesting we table this or communicate or continue it have any specific further information you would like to receive if we do continue?
I would love more information on the paddles and the balls that exist today that are quiet, and what the noise output is if we were to say that they only could use those paddles and those balls. What, you know, are there studies done on how loud they are and at what distance? So for example, if we learned that and they said, oh, well, it only needs to be 25 feet to get the 55 decibels, for example, that would inform us to maybe have a policy that we could have the courts closer to the neighbor's yard, because the requirement would be that you absolutely can only use this equipment. And if you're found with that other, you know, equipment anywhere in your property, like, you're gonna get fined. You're gonna get fined, and the police are gonna go and they're gonna search your stuff, and if they find the paddles, you're gonna be fined.
Town Manager Johnson.
Thank you. I want to be really clear about the enforcement. As you've seen in the report, cities in Marin County have rescinded theirs or are having trouble enforcing. I think a lot of people will do the right thing, and they will want to be respectful of their neighbors, and they will want to use equipment and do what they can. But the problem is, we get a bad actor, and remember this, even if you do it by use permit, it goes with the property. You get a bad actor, and then if we have if somebody complains, we are in the position of having to enforce it. And we do not have the staff. I'm not going to be sending a police officer to somebody's house on the weekend and have them show up at the door and say, we've received a report that you are using the wrong paddles. It's just not, it is and I want to manage the council's expectations and the community's expectations that is just not something that we can do here in Ross. And if you saw in the report that bigger cities that have more staff can't do it. So I just really want to be clear about that. Thank you.
All right. Any other further information? Councilmember Dowling.
I swear, I'm back and forth about table it for now, but a use permit seems like the medium way to go. You know, so will we do a use permit for the town's pickleball courts? And will we do a sound study for them? And will we go back and do a sound study for the Lagunitas Club? And that's why tabling it for now seems like the best way to go.
But, you know, we do have the ADR has two requests for pickleball courts coming up. I mean, we can't just say, well, we're thinking about it. I mean,
couldn't we say that they're asking for sports courts, which is so they could be used for tennis and basketball until we've made a decision of pickleball, so that they could go ahead, but not with pickleball.
Okay, well, everybody wants to know where I am. You know, I basically was of the opinion that the 250 feet with the use permit and the sound study, if somebody really wanted it badly enough to do all of that. The one thing that caused me to rethink this is Councilmember McMillan's invocation of this image of this huge concrete blockhouse.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so forth. That would not be something, of course, we'd have to remind us of design review. It wouldn't be a non-discretionary thing.
Good fire break.
But
yes,
I think I would be willing to go with that only for new structures, not going back and telling people you have to Clear this out or something. You're doing it. Thank you.
Well, I was never proposing that they tear out their
Yeah.
sport courts, just that this new use, pickleball, not be allowed unless
Yes,
it's, 250 feet.
new use, exactly. So whatever the town is doing, whatever anybody else is doing, whatever the tennis club is doing, this would not apply. I mean, there are always problems applying things retroactively. If somebody thinks they have a vested right, then actually we can't do that. Yes,
I also want to point out that, yes, pickleball has, in the past few years, risen in popularity, but it's actually existed as a sport since the late 70s and early 80s. It was originated, I understand, in the state of Washington, and has been very popular in other parts of the country, as you know.
all right. Well, how do we want to proceed? I mean, that would be my inclination. But I would like to see the ordinance, I would like some exceptions. And we might bring back an ordinance and I'll say I'm a no vote. I mean, that's my inclination today, and you asked for guidance. And that's the best guidance I can give. Anyone else have any comments?
No, I mean, again, this, if the noise from the sport changes, this can be reevaluated in a year or 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
But it's, I mean, I see it not so much as a pickleball problem as a noise problem. And I think noise should be regulated in the town.
Well, specifically what I'm proposing is that 250 feet, okay, sports court, 250 feet, that's it. If you don't have 250 feet, which would be most properties, then you have the option of just having a sports court and waiting for something to change. I mean, some people may be content to do that, and I agree with Councilmember Salter, things do tend to change. Remember how noisy motorcycles used to be? They're quieter now, aren't they? They're a lot quieter. Not quite quiet enough, but things change because of technology and because that's what the public wants. So basically, someone would have the option, if they want to go to all this expense and so forth, they just got to have that pickleball court and spend all that money. Okay, they can. Some people may elect simply to wait. So that is what I expect would happen. But if we do have, I mean, our three expressions don't exactly align, and typically the mayor doesn't make the motion, but I think I'm going to make an exception. I will make a motion.
Tonight.
That's right, that we.
just direction.
Well, I would, but don't I need to, should I have a vote or?
Well, I think we could take a straw vote so staff doesn't
Yeah,
waste their
straw
time in
vote, okay.
drafting
I
something that
stand
has
to-
no
thank you.
chance of passing. So
Yes, okay.
what would your
so-
proposal be? And
So
see if
my
there's support.
proposal specifically is 250 feet, sports court, okay. Less than 250 feet, then the owner has the option of a sound study and mitigation. With that, which would require some sort of use permit. You'd have to satisfy everyone, probably design review too, that your mitigation was something that would be acceptable in the neighborhood and would be effective enough. But I would also propose that there be some flexibility that the client, that the council could nevertheless waive portions of this if there were unusual circumstances. Just, well, I know you want objective standards, but I'm thinking of a street or something like that. All right. Anyway, that's what I would propose. If that's a problem, I could withdraw that. Okay. I do know it's Councilmember McMillan's birthday coming up, so I'm please.
So what you're doing, Bill, is you're like splitting the baby. You're having, if you have a big lot, you can have a pickleball court. If you have a littler lot, then you need to do a noise study and abatement. And you have to put in the soundproofing ranging from $25,000 to $90,000. And then you have this limited option C where if there's special circumstances, we can have flexibility. I don't like that at all.
Okay.
Because I think that's a slippery slope and, it allows a bunch of discretion and a bunch of favoritism and So I don't like that. I don't think we should allow pickleball on private residence, period. I think it's too loud and it's super annoying. These ladies that I was watching today, they were so bad, right? They could barely hit the ball, so it was just like dink, dink. But if you have really good people and they're going like this, it's gonna be like ding, it's gonna be so annoying. I don't know why we want to encourage and promote that in our town. I think, Branson and Lagunitas Club and the public courts, we can regulate with use permits or whatever. The 250 or further basically means no one's going to have a pickleball court anyway, so why don't we just say no pickleball courts? That would be what I would do. And people can have sport courts, right? And if things change down the road and new technology comes out and, then they can retool their sports court and make it into a pickleball court down the road. But I think for right now, the technology isn't with us. I don't see a ton of people here pounding on the table demanding their private pickleball court, right? So I don't think there's the demand, and I think we're just going to create a bunch more problems.
So you're saying that since basically 250 feet eliminates virtually all courts, why not just be straightforward about it and say, for now, the town of Ross doesn't allow pickleball, period. I think that makes better sense in many ways.
I could go with that. That makes sense to me.
And then again, of course, we can always reevaluate it. And then I guess do we have how do we continue the towns and Lagunitas Club? Is that through a use permit?
Excuse me.
Oh, yes?
Excuse me, through the mayor.
Yes.
So aren't you saying, Mayor Pro Tem McMillan, that you only want to do prospective, so new development would not be allowed on pickleball? Is that what you're saying? Because if it was what you were saying, then the town's courts and Lagunitas and Branson are already existing.
Yeah.
So what about existing private courts? They're allowed to have pickleball?
Ben, can we go back and regulate existing, if people already are playing pickleball on existing courts, can we go back and say, oh, no, you can't do that?
Again, it depends on how it was approved, so we'd have to research that. But from what I understood your proposal to be was perspective only in residential zones.
But, I do think there's probably an interest in not converting all of the existing tennis courts to pickleball courts. So
That would be a prospective use, right?
They're already there.
Well, some are there.
You can convert it. It's very easy to take a current court and just restripe it and put the nets there. So there's 13 courts. People have them in their private house, and they're playing already. I think Beach mentioned his neighbor's playing right now. So there's nothing to stop them. So if you're going to do this, you have to have a blanket, like no pickleball, period. If you have an existing court, sorry, no pickleball.
Okay, that would be fine with me, except for Branson and the Lagunitas Club and the public courts, which I think can be regulated by a use permit or whatever. I pass Dan forward.
That is sort of where we were starting, is that it's noisy, it's too noisy for a neighborhood. The sport of pickleball is too noisy for a neighborhood. So the point is, pickleball is not allowed, the game of pickleball is not allowed in Ross, except in the existing public, existing Branson, Lagunitas Club, and the town courts.
But they're across the street from home, so they haven't gotten a complaint now. Somebody
Okay.
moves in there, doesn't like the
Well, then
noise.
that's where there would be a use permit, so that that could be regulated through a use permit if it turns out that it's problematic. I don't think they should get an automatic pass, that they're grandfathered in. I don't think it should be grandfathered in, but I think it shouldn't be outlawed there, but there would be some conditional use permit that would say, that the noise is, I'm not quite sure, we'd have to figure out what we would say. The noise doesn't bother the neighbors, or it's not a certain amount or something. But I would have some sort of conditional use on the institutions, but I'm okay to say, the whole point of this is that pickleball is too noisy for neighborhoods, And so for now, we don't allow pickleball in residential areas.
Town Manager Johnson.
Pardon me?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Town Manager Johnson, I think,
Oh.
wanted to make a comment.
Yeah. So prohibiting pickleball anywhere is, I have some concerns about prohibiting pickleball because sometimes people can just start playing pickleball on their driveway. You know, there's all kinds of tape and so that starts to be an enforcement issue where we have a group of kids that are playing pickleball on their big driveway, and now the neighbors can say, well, you can't play pickleball. And then now we have to have police officers regulating what could be children. And so I have some concerns about that, and it's something that I would want to spend more time on. One thing that I'm just kind of throwing out there, let's just brainstorm, is that you could start off with a prohibition on pickleball on new development and see how that goes, and then see if there is a problem on existing courts. And you could always go back and change your ordinance or direct staff and the town attorney to do research on applying it retroactively, but you could kind of phase it.
But isn't it much more straightforward to not allow it now than to sort of, say you can't build a new court, but then, in a year we go back and tell people you can't do it on your old court either? That seems, one thing is, at the driveway, maybe we say, pickleball is not allowed on a court. And that lets the kids play whatever they're playing anywhere. That might take care of that, but some of the idea of just saying, well, if you have any kind of a court now, you can turn it into a pickleball court. That doesn't, if the whole point is that pickleball is too noisy, why would we say that that's okay?
I'm just having such a problem with all of this because, again, maybe people here don't play pickleball and like it. There are a lot of people that like this sport and want to play it. And so I just, again, we're trying to give them direction. I think we need to maybe survey our town, get more input from people who play, why they like it, people who live next to courts and don't mind the noise, the people who live next to the courts and do mind the noise. This is, it's a popular sport, it's new, and we're trying to come up with, thread the needle here, and I just don't think we have enough information or enough input from all the stakeholders that matter. And it's just, it really pains me that we're trying to make a decision or give direction right now. I have no problem, by the way, saying, hey, we're not approving any pickleball courts right now. And we have a moratorium of, we're not approving them until we collect more information, more input from the entire community and figure out, again, on these paddles and these balls. I can't believe that we're so dismissive of that. If we just say, you want to say nobody can play pickleball in town on private property. That is just so restrictive and paternalistic. And these people, again, I go back to pools. I could just see back in the day when pools were started, no pools in this town, it's too loud. Kids are splashing. Like you take it for granted now. This is a new sport and people are learning and it's a new technology. And I really believe if we said no paddles that make noise and no balls be used, that might be a start. Why not just start there and say, and you're like, oh, the enforcement, but we can't even enforce leaf blowers right now. I intend that our people will do what we're asking them to do, which is play quieter for the benefit of everybody. Why can't we just start there instead of coming up with this overarching theory that we should ban the sport completely from the town?
Well, town staff is telling us that's not practical. The other thing is, I'm not certain that this new equipment is the same game, because I think if it was a whole lot quieter, people would have switched over to quieter equipment a long time ago. I think that wooden paddle and that hard ball is part of the game, and that makes noise. So I'm kind of like a non-starter for the equipment issue for now. I still, I think it's fine to say that we shouldn't have pickleball in town.
The equipment is new. And I learned about it from talking to a woman who had driven down from Canada for a pickleball tournament, a national championship, or some championship game. And she said, really, it was very new. I mean, within the last 2 months, but expensive. And she expects the price will come down because it's expensive because it's new. I mean, part of it's the materials, but it's about $230 per paddle. Well, that's a lot better than $125,000 for, soundproofing your court, isn't it? I mean, think about it. So I do agree that I think technology will eventually change. And I'm just wondering, though, that town of, was it Belvedere that initially had an ordinance and then repealed it or something like that? Was that recently that they did that, or is this historical? Maybe there weren't new paddles that were practical.
I'm not sure exactly when that happened,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
it was,
Well,
it was hard for them to enforce.
seems to me, we've been talking about this for a long time. We have a couple of options. One is, basically, I think the proposal is we can ban new pickleball uses with existing uses subject to a use permit, and on non-residential properties. But otherwise ban new uses on residential properties, not try to go back and ban existing uses that we may or may not know about on residential properties. So that's one possibility. And the other possibility or proposal is to table this or continue it for further information. Were we to do that, the two things I would be interested in is a little more about new products and new materials, but also I would like to hear more about Belvedere's experience. How long ago was that? And specifically, what problems did they have? And why did they to take the extraordinary step of just repealing the ordinance? So that it would be a limited additional staff report, give people a bit more time to think about it and digest everything we've heard tonight. I know I have heard some new things that I hadn't considered before. For example, the pickleball courts at Lagunitas. So everybody's looking at me now. Okay.
Well, so I think in the meantime, we should put a moratorium on the 2 pending pickleball courts.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Until we further discuss this for more hours.
Yes.
That's what we
well,
did with
yes.
Tu Bellagio, right?
I mean,
as we did with Tu Bellagio.
Yes, so exactly. So we continue the existing moratorium. That would be the effect of continuing this, as opposed to simply banning it now and then waiting for this to come up again because of new technology or changes.
Mayor?
I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, but the sports courts could still go through.
Oh,
They
yes.
just can't play pickleball on them. They could play.
That is right. Pickleball would not be prohibited, would be prohibited absent further action.
Yeah, and my last input was, can we get some input from the community? I think this came on the agenda, and those who are very, very passionate picked up on this, but we literally have an event on Friday called For the Love of Pickleball on our courts being done by Ross Rec. So it's sort of ironic that we're telling our townspeople to go play pickleball for the love of pickleball on a town-sponsored event. We need to solicit more input from our community, from the people who play it, from the people who live there, just so I don't know how we do that. I'm happy to work with you guys on a survey, but just so we're not making this decision to ban pickleball in the town of Ross, except for 3 places, but without getting the input that I think we need from our community.
So I think this could come back on the agenda next month, and I think there could be something in the morning after that said, we're discussing regulating pickleball because of the noise, and it'll be discussed again in the October meeting, but I wouldn't drag it out. I think people need to know. We've had a lot of discussion. We're sort of all up to date right now. People may not have known, so I do agree. It would be fine to hear if people want to comment. I wouldn't do a survey, but it could be in the morning after. People could be told that it's going to be on the agenda next month, and we will discuss what sorts of restrictions, if any, there are on pickleball throughout the town. I think that's an option. I still think I still don't think there's anything wrong with saying it can't, it's not a residential sport. I mean, you wouldn't let band practice outside, in a house. I mean, it's, loud noises aren't generally allowed in residential areas, and this is one. So I don't think it's not unreasonable, but I don't think there's anything wrong with this current idea of telling ADR that for the time being, we don't want to say pickleball is okay, and then we could talk about it and come to some conclusion next month.
Okay. Ben, did you have a comment?
Yeah, there was a comment earlier saying that a moratorium is in effect. There's no moratorium in effect. That's a procedural ordinance that takes 4/5 vote. Right now, what we've done with the one applicant is have a condition of approval when that came forward. So it's different. I just want the council to understand that.
So that's, okay, so we do the same for the next two properties?
If the application warrants that, we can do that for the other properties.
All right.
And I just want to make sure with the staff that you feel like a month's time is enough time to just prep some of them. Like I said, for me, it's about the paddles and I don't want to make you guys do a lot of work, and you're busy already. So I'm happy to take a look at this again. I just want the public to know, and I'd like the staff to have time to do the research on paddles and balls and whatnot.
Well, we can certainly find out about Belvedere's experience. We can certainly do some Google searches and looking, I mean, that's not difficult. We can find out a little bit more what's available. We're not going to be able to do our own, scientific surveys. We can certainly, put out an e-blast about this issue. Our morning after goes out tomorrow. I can ask our town clerk who prepares it to put a little bit of blurb. We actually don't have much room in this one, but we'll try to put a little information in there about, look for it on the October 10th agenda. The agenda is not final until it's published. So every once in a while, something can happen, and we always have to have a little bit of a caveat. So we can do that. You mentioned, Councilmember Salter, the idea of surveying. Don't have that ability right now, and that's not something we're going to be able to do before October. But we can, try to get information out via an e-blast in the morning after.
Yeah, that sounds totally reasonable.
Okay.
Just if we got more input from the public
Yeah.
than we did this month.
Yeah, maybe an e-blast. The morning after, I think, is already, isn't it? I'm sorry. Yeah, it could go in this morning after, right? Tomorrow's morning after?
Yeah, but it's just we don't really have that much room, so it'll just be I'll ask Cindy to put in a little thing,
Okay,
little shout out.
very good.
Yeah, maybe it could be for the love of pickleball or for the hate. Please give us your
All right.
comments.
And with that, I think, does that conclude our item, consideration of this item? Because it is getting late and we still have a special session too.
I would just,
Closed session.
Mayor, I just want to check in with our planning and building director about the ADR, do you have sufficient direction? You
Yes, so we would apply the same conditions from 2 Bellagio, which basically state that they would be subject to any regulations regarding pickleball for the sports court.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, council.
All right, so that brings us to our final items. So we're now moving on to the end of that is the end of the administrative agenda, and we have no further public planning projects, so we move on to item 12, no action items. First of all, is there any council correspondence that any council member wishes to share? Anyone? Okay, hearing no one. No one having spoken up, I assume there is no council correspondence. Bear with me. Future council items. Does any council member have any future council items to propose? Councilmember McMillan.
Well, we heard from Diane Duda that she wants an agenda item on the Marin Commission on Aging. So I would add that.
So I support that.
All right, so there's two, and anything further?
Well, I'll ask again if people are interested in having an agenda item next month to discuss whether the council would like to ask the Ross Valley Fire Department to consider postponing the closure of the Ross Fire Station if there's no certainty about the ambulance placement in the next month or two. It's not something we can ask much later than now because the jurisdictions are making plans to accommodate extra people when the station's closed. And the paramedic discussions aren't going anywhere fast. And this perhaps would, stimulate the paramedic discussions to go a little faster and get a decision. But in any case, it certainly showcases our interest in having medical workers in town, that we would like to consider postponing the closure of the Ross Fire Station until we have some certainty about the paramedic ambulance placement.
Okay, is there a second?
I support, I would like to add an item that is more broad than that, is just more a discussion about what are we doing with Ross Valley, with our fire station and the Ross Valley Fire Department as just an item for discussion. Because there's so much uncertainty, like I support us talking about this issue broadly. Again, there is this issue of when that station's supposed to close, obviously the allocation of the cost is supposed to be discussed. So as an item, I'm broadening it. I support you on talking about the closure and talking about what are we doing here with fire if we lose the paramedics or if this just drags on. How are we addressing that?
So I'm not okay with bringing up the money part because I do want to bring that up, but I think come July 1, the station's either going to be open for a few more months or it's closed, and I absolutely would support discussing money at that point because I think the allocations aren't correct and they haven't been reassessed. But I think for now, I think it's kind of a cleaner position to say we want to be sure that we have some workers on site. So Ross Valley Fire Department, would you consider postponing the closure of our station until we're sure we've got some ambulance people staying? That's my,
Okay,
I mean,
so I
so
think,
mine is like simply a simple request. The agenda item is to ask the council members, are you willing to go to the fire board to ask, would they consider postponing the closure of the station until we get some certainty about the paramedics?
Okay, I support us talking about that.
okay. So that narrow item, we have two council members who wish that to be placed on the agenda. Is there anything else, any other new business?
I have one item, which is I would like us to do a brainstorming session on sort of ideas that are sort of surfacing of things we'd like to do in town. And I'm sorry, I'm not speaking so well because it's been such a long meeting. But what I'm asking is we set the budget in a special meeting, and then that sort of sets the priorities for what we do in the year. And I think it's difficult with staff to, if we have a new item come up that's outside of maybe that budget. So if we could maybe talk about how do we as a council set our priorities ahead of the budget meeting, where we sort of talk about potential projects or ideas that would then flow into the budget, that we give that guidance ahead of the budget meeting. Does that make sense? I'm sorry if I'm not being
We
clear.
used to have a strategic planning session that was a couple months before the budget, and we kind of all concluded that it was really redundant because we would basically discuss stuff and then we would discuss it again at the budget meeting.
Okay.
So it kind of became redundant. And so we kind of save up all our priorities and brainstorming for the budget meeting, which is usually at the end of April.
Right. But so all I'm saying is because with that, the budget's sort of set, and then there's sort of priorities, and then I know we've talked, like, we brought up Allen, for example, and added that, but giving more lead time to that so that the staff could say, hey, I don't think that's gonna fit in the budget, or I have to cut this. It seems, I don't know if, I'd rather us be able to say, what are some big ideas that everybody has, and give them time to plan for the budget. Maybe it is redundant, but I just noticed that, when I bring up stuff and I'm new, it's like, hey, but, we have the budget, let's try to stick to more of a process, which I respect. So I'd love a chance for us, because we can't talk outside of council meetings or even from your committees if things come up, like, hey, Public Works, we're gonna meet and we're thinking of this, or whatever the bridge might be, or we wanna put a bridge here. Being able to just do that in a more focused way with the 5 of us, so that when the budget comes, it's a little clearer and there's not any surprises. I guess that's all I'm saying. If you said it's redundant, I hear you, but I think what I'm noticing is I'm creeping up with all these ideas, and I think I'd rather do it with everybody together and save them all, and then sort of do it in the budget and give the staff time to say, that works, that doesn't, or that won't fit in this year's budget, maybe we should do it next year.
I think if there was, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like what you're proposing is a separate sort of brainstorming or a retreat or a discussion that is prior to our strategic planning system, so we can sort of become more specific and have a little more time to get specific, so that can feed into the budget process.
Correct. That's
But
what
that would, I don't think that's something we would do in a regular council meeting. That is,
No,
would
no,
have
it'd
to
be a
be.
separate- it'd be
So
separate.
are you proposing that we have an agenda item so we can discuss whether to have that separate meeting?
Yes, I guess it would be an agenda item to discuss, can we have that little powwow, the retreat?
Oh, I'm sorry, and Councilmember
No,
Robbins was going to say something.
I mean, it's certainly talking about priorities a little bit ahead of the budget. The first look at the budget in April is a good idea. It is true, when we had that separate meeting in February, it was really a waste of time. We'd spend like 6 hours and we get nowhere. But, I mean, on the other hand, if it's an agenda item, in January, February, something of a regular meeting, just to spare people extra meetings, and we talk about, are there ideas to think about incorporating in the budget? I mean, that's a good topic to have. But maybe it could be at a meeting and not at a whole separate workshop, because we just never got anywhere with those workshops except hours of wasted time. Pardon me?
Lots of Post-its.
Oh, yes.
Well, I was going to say, based on your experience in the past, maybe this is a good compromise, that we'd have that discussion ahead of the big budget meeting, but we do it at a council meeting.
Yeah.
And we'd set aside a good chunk of time to do that, so it could be thoughtful.
We may not even need that much time. I mean, we can all think ahead of time, what ideas might we have, and maybe there aren't a ton of ideas, and maybe it's pretty easy to sift through, this seems good, this not, this seems good, this not. It's just a chance to bring it up, and I think that could be something that we could do in February, maybe.
Okay, so let's just add it to the agenda, and then we can talk about how we'd structure it.
Add it to the agenda.
No, I don't, I thought you had to propose things, I'm sorry. Do I have to, we're all talking, but do you have to propose to talk?
I think the agenda item of priorities seems like a good idea, and that could be
Okay.
in February, and I would support that.
Okay, and what I would say to save everyone time is if you meet with your subcommittees ever, you could do it in the little subcommittees, and then those people
Yes,
can bring
leave
them
that in.
forward to the strategic meeting.
Not all subcommittees meet.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
thank you.
So any other future council items at this time? All right, very good. I was going to propose a future council item that I'm not contemplating any significant staff time on this, but since just a council discussion of the circumstances under which the council would, or the mayor would set in motion a proclamation. And we do proclamations from time to time, and I've reviewed the procedures manual, which says it's up to the mayor. And I think that's pretty general. There are a lot of people in town who do a lot for the town, and we could issue a lot of proclamations. So I would like to see a bit more discussion and guidance from the council. When is it appropriate to do that? I mean, are there some exceptional circumstances where we would issue a proclamation? I don't think, if we issue too many, then the proclamations don't mean anything, and it's a burden on staff time. And then perhaps there's a person that we overlooked. So I do think it should be exceptional.
Yeah, I support that being on
Yeah,
it.
all right. Well, we'll add that to some future agenda as well. Okay, well, with that, we have concluded our regular meeting agenda, and so we will take a brief break and then resume our special session. Thank you, everybody. So what do you,
Thank you for staying.
stretch your legs?
Meeting.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Even if I shut down all your ideas.
One idea.